It's time for Day 4 Dreamers. Welcome and enjoy the storyline on this channel. It's time for Day 4 Dreamers. In a kingdom shrouded in darkness, Kim Jong-cheol sat wearily on the Demon King's throne. He was a graduate student from Korea who mysteriously turned into Kratos, the last Demon King from the game Paladin of Blood that he had been playing all this time. The game told the story of the resurrection of an ancient hero. But now, after being trapped inside it, Kim realized that awakening the hero was no longer his main problem. His daydream was interrupted when Zephyros, a level 15 royal servant, reported that all war preparations were complete and the troops were ready to move. Outside the palace, thousands of demons had gathered eager for war. Asurat, the level 534 commander known as the Blood-Drinking Prince, called for an end to the long famine through a massive invasion. Serki, the level 531 commander known as the Cold Queen, harbored deep sorrow over the fate of her people living in the wasteland, to the point where they had to eat their own families just to survive. Among them stood Hartok, level 555, the Grand Duke of Mist, calm and dignified, and Baal, level 539, the giant-bodied Blackstone tyrant with his massive axe. Not long after, Kratos came out with Zephyros and stood before the troops awaiting his command. All the commanders immediately prepared to listen to the Demon King's instructions. As the commanders waited for a new conquest strategy, Kratos instead ordered the entire army to stop attacking and start farming. Silence immediately enveloped the field. It was followed by anger because the order was considered impossible and unreasonable. Seeing his subordinates' anger, Kratos spontaneously showed his dance, even though he himself was scared in silence. Strangely, that action actually made all the commanders fall silent, because the figure before them remained the most terrifying Demon King they had ever known. Kratos then remembered this war would awaken the ancient hero from Paladin of Blood, a figure he had played as more than 20 times. That hero had reached the maximum level, far surpassing the power of the Demon King and all his commanders. Kim Chi was a level 9990 warrior with a sturdy build, sharp gaze, and an intimidating aura, even though his clothes didn't quite match his imposing presence. Seeing that figure, Kratos could only accept the reality that sooner or later he would die at Agat Kim Chi's hands. Before he became Kratos, Kim Jong-cheol was simply an agriculture graduate student at Korea University who wanted to be a successful farmer, not a demon king ruling the world. Thanks to his intelligence, he became the top student. But that achievement only made the professors keep taking advantage of him. Various assignments, research, and even work on the professor's private fields were forced onto him, wrapped in praise and academic promises. Slowly, Kim realized that he was more like a slave than an outstanding student. All his hard work only boosted the professors' reputations, while he remained in their shadow. The mounting pressure eventually crushed his spirit. His dopamine was depleted. His sanity was on the brink, and he believed that the only way to feel true achievement was through games. So he played Paladin of Blood, a famous game known for its difficulty and the fact that no one had ever completed it 19 times. In order to achieve true victory, Kim played without sleep and kept pushing his own limits. His insane efforts paid off. Kim became the first person to successfully complete Paladin of Blood. For the 19th time, in the midst of exhaustion, he finally felt happiness and believed that there was no one stronger than him in that world. However, his journey was not over yet. In his quiet apartment, Kim started the 20th game with a level 9990 character. He once thought about the maximum level of 9999. Then he decided to stop pursuing it because the time required felt too long. Not long after, a game notification appeared and asked if he was ready to start the 20th adventure. Without hesitation, Kim immediately accepted it. A moment later, a bright light shone from the monitor. It surprised him and pulled his soul out of his body. In an instant, his soul passed through the screen and entered another world. The light took Kim to a different dimension. Meanwhile, his spiritual body kept soaring and his mind tried to comprehend that impossible reality. Although confused, Kim tried to stay calm and believed that his intelligence would help him find a way out. When he saw his blue-colored body, he realized that he was now just a spirit that could not be hurt or fall. His spirit shot forward very quickly until he saw the Tower of Life. At that moment, he realized that he had truly entered the world of Paladin of Blood. His shock increased when he saw the legendary Paladin's tomb, but that feeling turned into excitement because he was sure he would possess the body of Agat Kim Chi. a level 9,990 character who was close to reaching absolute power. Kim imagined a new life as an unbeatable figure. However, when he saw Agit Kim Chi sleeping in such cute clothes, doubt arose, and he felt he didn't want to possess that body. A moment later, his spirit shot off again toward another fate he had never imagined. In the midst of his confusion, Kim saw Kratos, the demon king feared by the world, and immediately rejected the possibility of entering that body. But fate had other plans. His spirit merged with Kratos, making him sit on the throne while holding his head, nearly losing his sanity because of the absurd reality. Kim regretted ever hesitating about Agit Kim Chi. He realized that without that doubt, he might have become the strongest character, almost reaching the peak of absolute power. Meanwhile, Zephyros walked around the palace area and heard rumors that Kratos was getting weaker. His curiosity led him to a closed room. It was where the demon generals discussed Kratos' fears and the decision to cancel the major attack. Inside that room, the generals silently planned Kratos' assassination and the division of the throne's power. Still, they stayed cautious, recalling that Kratos once took the throne by beheading the last demon king. Hartog considered the possibility that Kratos was not truly weakened yet, since fighting him could result in heavy casualties. Sergei suggested Asurat as the main shield, but Asurat had already planned how he would retaliate if that plan was carried out. Meanwhile, Baal remained silent and only thought about the hunger that never went away. Asurat kept questioning the evidence of Kratos' weakness, but they agreed to finish him off if the opportunity truly existed. Sergei, Asurat, and Hartog laughed slyly. Meanwhile, Baal kept thinking about his hunger. Zephyros, who overheard all the conversations, immediately reported it to Kratos, while also conveying that the morale of the demon troops had dropped far below what it used to be. Some demons had started killing and devouring one another. Meanwhile, others left the demon realm without permission. Zephyros also reported that the four main generals considered Kratos to have weakened and were planning to behead him in order to seize power. Hearing this, Kratos was overcome with fear. He realized that weakness in this world would only lead to death. His thoughts turned once again to Agit Kim Chi. He wondered if the hero was now just a corpse, making an attack on the human world seem like a safer option. However, Zephyros then revealed a red stone wrapped in white cloth, a video of Tom of the Paladin sent by General Ogmia. Seeing it, Kratos immediately remembered Agit Kim Chi and panicked again, imagining a terrible death at the hands of that figure. A few moments later, he realized that it was all just his own fear. Even though Agit Kim Chi didn't actually appear, Kratos still thought his plan was insane. He didn't want to meet the hero and have to survive in that place. Kratos reflected on his fate once again. If he appeared weak, the commanders would kill him. If he attacked humans, Agit Kim Chi would come to finish him off. The pressure made him cry and question the fate that brought him to a game world without the happiness he had ever dreamed of. But in the end, he found one way to survive, which was to solve the food crisis and calm the demon nation. As he was about to leave, he accidentally apologized to Zephyros and expressed his desire to see land that could be used for farming. The apology left Zephyros confused. The figure of Kratos, known for being arrogant, narcissistic, and rude, suddenly showed a completely different attitude. On the other hand, Kratos himself didn't understand the reason for the surprise and began to suspect that Zephyros was provoking him, considering the servant's role in the game was very minor. Old memories started to resurface. Kratos remembered an armored demon who once challenged him. At that time, Zephyros conveyed that the demon king had no intention of fighting, but that order was ignored. The demon mercilessly beat Zephyros until he was completely defeated. Then Zephyros apologized for failing to protect his king. That event from the past is what made Zephyros so loyal and respectful to Kratos. With a flat expression, he judged that Kratos had made a huge mistake, even becoming the least trusted demon king among the demons. To himself, Kratos just thought his servant was really annoying. Zephyros pulled out a notebook and questioned the plan to farm in demon territory, sarcastically noting Kratos' poor memory. That made Kratos upset, because Zephyros didn't show any fear at all toward the supreme ruler of the demon race. Sometime later, they finally arrived at Dihampakan, the barren land that would be turned into farmland. Zephyros reminded them that the previous demon kings, including Kratos in the past, had failed to farm there because the temperature was too extreme. Kratos understood that the place was indeed known as the Land of Death, but he was still confident he could change it. Even though he hated farming, Kratos realized that survival was the top priority. He sat down and started digging the ground, while Zephyros just watched in confusion. When dirt accidentally got into his mouth, Zephyros once again noted the strange changes in the Demon King. thinking of him as a homeless man eating dirt. That judgment made Kratos annoyed again. Zephyros explained that documenting the Demon King's story was his duty. Also, Kratos' abilities were now seen as diminished. After examining the soil, Kratos realized that the area had no nutrients at all and lacked nitrogen, an essential element for plant growth. He remembered that in his original world, humans used nitrogen fixation technology to increase food production, but that method was impossible to apply in this place. Because of that, Kratos began to think about natural nitrogen fixation mechanisms. He recalled that lightning could convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrite, which then fertilized the soil through rainwater. That memory led him to one of the Demon King's techniques. His blood could trigger both lightning and moisture at the same time, generating great energy that could turn barren land into fertile soil. After realizing that possibility, Kratos immediately asked Zephyros to move away from the area. Kratos scratched his own hand, his nails piercing the skin in order to carry out his plan. An intense pain instantly spread throughout his entire body, making him curse the insane actions a Demon King had to take just to survive. In the midst of that suffering, Kratos realized there were others present around him. The demon generals were apparently hiding behind the trees, watching his every move. They became more convinced that the Demon King had truly weakened. Meanwhile, Kratos kept enduring the pain until a muffled scream escaped his lips. With a blank expression, Zephyros concluded that Kratos had completely weakened. This made Kratos upset, and he began to suspect that his servant was deliberately provoking him to die quickly. Even so, Kratos wounded his hand even deeper. For him, the pain was still better than losing his life. Blood finally began to drip. Meanwhile, Zephyros kept watching without any change in expression. However, the amount of blood that came out was actually very little. This made Kratos curse again while enduring the pain. Not long after, the demon generals appeared. Hartog noticed Kratos' condition and began to question whether he was all right. Kratos was surprised because his weakness was now clearly visible in front of them. Elsewhere, Agit Kim-chi stood alone in his cute outfit. His gaze was empty. Meanwhile, memories of his previous life slowly returned. He realized that he had gone through this cycle of life more than 10 times, as if trapped in a fate that kept repeating. In the past, there was always a call of duty that gave him a purpose to keep moving forward. But now, all of that was gone. There were no more orders, goals, or reasons to move. In that silence, Agit Kim-chi began to contemplate the meaning of his existence and could only stare at his own hands. In the end, he remained silent, frozen in the stillness, as if the whole world had stopped moving along with him. Except in front of Kratos, the demon generals laughed at him and were confident they could end the Demon King's life. The tense atmosphere made Kratos even more panicked. Asurat emphasized that the Demon King should be the strongest figure. To hide his fear, Kratos put on a terrifying expression, even though he still couldn't use his own skill. On the contrary, Asurat misunderstood and thought Kratos was gathering great power, so he himself was filled with tension and could only maintain a thin smile. He then questioned whether Kratos, now weakened, could face the four of them. But when he looked back, he was surprised to see his three companions hiding behind a tree, using him as a shield while waiting to attack together if the fight looked easy. Annoyed by their cunning, Asurat vented his frustration. Meanwhile, the three commanders still considered evil as the natural trait of demons. Amid the tension, Zephyros brought up the battle screen and reminded everyone of the ancient demon tradition that a fight only ends with death, with no surrender. That signal made Kratos and Asurat realize that the battle had to start soon. Asurat tried to calm himself and remained confident that he would win because Kratos was weakening. On the other hand, Kratos grew more panicked, unsure how to escape. He realized the power he had tried before was still nowhere near enough to demonstrate to the demon generals. Asurat finally launched the first attack. Kratos immediately recognized the attack pattern from the game, which only had two possibilities: stabbing or slashing. Although panicked and unable to dodge, his body moved on instinct and dodged. Surprised, he noticed Asurat's foot position signaled a stabbing attack, exactly like what he had seen in the game. Memories of that game resurfaced. Every move Asurat made was identical to the game version. Kratos managed to dodge the next attack as well. From behind the tree, Hartok and Sergei were confused to see Kratos only dodging without fighting back. Even though he was continuously bombarded with attacks, Kratos still didn't fight back and began to realize that all of Asurat's moves were exactly the same as what he had learned before. When Kim played Paladin of Blood, he lost to Asurat many times because of his agility. Victory was only achieved on the 128th attempt by using the tactic of throwing stones and then dodging until Asurat became exhausted. That experience now comes back to mind in the middle of the battle. Asurat keeps launching attacks, while cold sweat drenches Kratos' face. However, he is starting to believe that his opponent's attacks won't be able to hurt him. On the other hand, the three demon generals hiding nearby are starting to panic. Kratos looks relaxed. He even laughs from time to time while dodging every attack. It's as if the fight is just a game to him. That sight makes them even more anxious. Meanwhile, Asurat grits his teeth and is boiling with anger toward Kratos. At the same time, Kratos keeps laughing. He realizes that just dodging Asurat's attacks is not enough to defeat his opponent. Suddenly, a status window appears and informs him that Kim Jong-chol has understood the basic rules of this world. Kratos then wonders if this is the kind of system that usually appears in webtoons. Soon after, a notification says Kim dodged the attack due to high concentration. Then, the character system partially unlocks and the target function activates. When he turns around, Kratos sees a green marker right on Asurat's face. It reminds him of the special ability feature in games. Without hesitation, Kratos claws his own hand until blood spurts out even more than before. The blood attack finally manages to injure Asurat, surprising Hartok and Sergei. The demons immediately praise Kratos as the Demon King for being able to subdue his opponent. Asurat slumps to the ground. The explosion from the attack scatters sand and leaves a severe wound. But Kratos is actually surprised because Asurat is still alive and able to recover very quickly. Without giving him a chance, he launches another blood attack. Seeing this, the three demon generals hiding become even more terrified. They think Kratos is deliberately torturing Asurat by injuring him repeatedly without killing him. Asurat finally collapses. His clothes are completely burned and his body is covered in wounds. Meanwhile, Kratos is still confused as to why his opponent hasn't died yet. Not long after, the status window informs him that all of Asurat's clothes have disappeared. It's a strange piece of information in the middle of that situation. After that, a new system opens and the weapon inventory feature is successfully activated. However, when he checks it, Kratos only finds the clothes he's wearing and no weapons at all. Staring at Asurat, who is unconscious, Kratos realizes that he's not strong enough yet to truly kill his opponent. Moreover, Asurat's recovery ability is truly extraordinary. So he starts thinking of another way to get rid of him. Suddenly, an idea comes to him: to use continuous blood attacks to inject a large amount of nitrogen into the ground. Feeling that he has found a clever solution, Kratos chuckles and shifts his gaze to the three demon commanders who are still hiding. He is sure that they are now filled with fear. Not long after, Kratos calls Sergei and orders him to tie up Asurat as tightly as possible. Sergei misunderstands, believing Kratos wants to humiliate Asurat, who is already unclothed. Meanwhile, Kratos remembers a strategy he once used in Paladin of Blood, which was to tie up the unconscious Asurat to a utility pole. However, in the middle of the process, Asurat suddenly regains consciousness. He is angry because he was captured, and even though he was weakened, Kratos' blood attack still failed to kill him, and now he intends to take revenge. Kratos immediately proceeds to the next step by launching a blood attack to oxidize the nitrogen in the air into nitrate. After that, Kratos orders Hartog to cover the area with a thick fog until water starts to drip. Hartog misunderstands the intention again and thinks Kratos wants to intensify the pain caused by the lightning strike. Using his power, the fog fills the entire area. Kratos continues his plan by spreading the fog and using the blood attack again. An incredible pain spreads through his body, but he endures it without showing any weakness. Meanwhile, Zephyros just observes all those actions with a blank expression. The blood splattered everywhere soaks the surrounding area, making Baal and Sergei unable to believe what they're seeing. Water, blood, and lightning mix into a chaotic scene. Meanwhile, Kratos actually laughs because he's sure the process will enrich the soil with nitrogen. What comes to his mind isn't the battle, but rather a fertile field with an abundant harvest. Kratos launches another blood attack, making the Asurat suffer even more. Amidst the lightning, blood, and rain from the mist, the atmosphere becomes even more intense. After a while, Kratos takes a handful of soil and examines it. He concludes that adding nitrogen improves soil fertility, but the area's monofilin soil structure still struggles to absorb water and oxygen. Realizing that ideal farmland soil must have a granular texture, Kratos then understands the next step to take, which is fertilizer. Kratos' enthusiasm flares up immediately. He orders the three demon commanders to bring him manure, which surprises them and makes them look at each other in confusion. In their minds, after roasting a living Asurat, Kratos now intends to cover his body with manure, an act they consider extremely cruel. On a sunny day, agate Kim Chi was strolling leisurely through the forest when he heard cries for help. Behind some bushes, he found two men who were injured from a goblin attack. Both of them offered a reward if agate Kim Chi was willing to help them. As he neared, agate Kim Chi's cold, handsome face drew their attention. However, the cute outfit with a red heart accessory on his chest left the two men puzzled and made them think he looked strange. Even though he tried to convince them that he wasn't suspicious, their suspicion only grew stronger. Agate Kim Chi then asked about the condition of their legs and easily lifted one of the injured men onto his shoulder without showing any difficulty at all. He asked them for directions to their destination, amazing both with his strength as he carried an adult man with one hand. On the way, they asked agate Kim Chi's name. However, the calm answer he gave only made them even more confused because they had to find out the name themselves. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent, with no one knowing what else to say. The palace looked eerie under the evening sky, while thousands of birds circled around the castle. In one of the rooms, 3 demon commanders were having a serious discussion about Kratos' order to collect dung. Hartog questioned how to do it, while Sergei felt disgusted. Baal said he hadn't eaten in a while, so he couldn't defecate, and Sergei was in the same situation. Hartog then suggested that if they couldn't do it themselves, the lower-class demons should be forced to provide the dung. In a demon village, soldiers waited for a demon ordered to defecate, but he nervously admitted he couldn't because he hadn't eaten in a long time. Hearing that explanation, Hartog suddenly strangled the demon, intending to kill him after getting a new idea. As the situation worsened, Baal stopped him and explained that killing the demon would only make them lose what they needed. Hartog then let him go and acknowledged Baal's intelligence. However, not long after, Hartog suggested that the demons be fed with Baal's flesh so they could defecate again. That suggestion immediately triggered Baal's anger, making the other demons terrified as the two commanders once again showed their terrifying nature. Baal then beat Hartog mercilessly. In the midst of the commotion, Sarutul suddenly appeared and struck both of them with a blood attack while questioning their actions. Sometime later, they returned to the palace. In the main hall, Sarutul sat on his throne and explained that the waste was needed as a nutrient-rich fertilizer. Hearing the term fertilizer, Zephyros asked for an explanation. Sarutul explained that fertilizer is used to provide nutrients to the soil and can be made from wood ash, grass, eggshells, and chicken manure. Wood ash and grass could be obtained from empty houses, but eggshells and chicken manure were the main problems. Because of that, Sarutul asked for a map of their territory. While observing it, he realized that the map was identical to the one in the game. That realization immediately reminded him of a location he used to visit frequently. In that place, thousands of demon seagulls lived, filling the entire area. According to Kratos, they must produce a lot of droppings and eggs because they can absorb nutrients from the soil in human lands. That place became the perfect location to get fertilizer materials. Zephyros understood the intention, but immediately reminded that the area was known as a deadly ravine. There was no safe footing, and anyone who fell would be swallowed by the fierce waves below the cliff. Kratos understood the danger because that location couldn't be accessed by players normally in the game. However, he was still confident he could reach it by climbing. Not long after, Kratos, Zephyros, and the 3 demon generals arrived at the location. A massive cliff rose high as thousands of seagull demons circled, and huge waves crashed thunderously against the rocks. The 3 demon generals were confused, not understanding why Kratos brought them to such a dangerous place. For ages, many have tried to take seagull demon eggs and products, but all became victims of the fierce sea. Amidst the strong winds and the roar of the waves, Kratos began to explain his plan. Kratos plans to climb the cliff, collect the droppings and eggshells into a bag, then throw them down to be caught by the commanders. As a reward, he promised food for all the demons if the plan succeeded. Baal was interested, but remained silent. He recalled the demons suffering from living long without food. Meanwhile, Kratos stood at the cliff's edge, watching the towering cliffs and fierce waves that reminded him of his game experiences. On his 13th playthrough, he had climbed the same cliff hundreds of times and died over and over again. Armed with that experience, Kratos immediately ran and jumped toward the cliff wall. Zephyros and the 3 demon commanders were shocked to see that reckless action. Kratos managed to grip the rock with his sharp claws, but the surface of the cliff turned out to be brittle and easily crumbled, causing his body to fall briefly before he finally managed to hold on. Seeing the situation, Zephyros and the commanders began to worry. Sarutul then opened his system inventory and removed all his equipment until his body was no longer covered by clothing. The strange sight left Zephyros and the 3 demon commanders stunned, unable to understand their demon king's actions. However, Sarutul had a clear purpose. He realized that the only way to reach the top was to take advantage of the system's mechanism by rolling his body upward through the gap created by the inventory feature. At the bottom of the cliff, Sergei closed his eyes and screamed because he found the scene he saw extremely disgusting. Meanwhile, Sarutul repeatedly commanded the system to equip and unequip his gear. His clothes kept appearing and disappearing non-stop, causing his body to slowly move upward toward the top. After a long struggle, Sarutul finally managed to reach the top of the cliff and got fully dressed again. Seeing a world with an open game system, a manipulable inventory, and areas that should be impossible to reach, he became even more convinced that nothing is truly impossible as long as he keeps experimenting. Down below, Baal was only thinking about Sarutul's promise to give food to the demons. Because of that, he decided to help and intended to climb the cliff to meet Sarutul. Zephyros was surprised and reminded him that the place was a death chasm that had claimed many lives. However, before he could finish his explanation, Baal had already run and jumped toward the cliff. From above, Sarutul, who realized what was happening, immediately tried to stop him, but it was already too late. Baal failed to keep his footing, slipped, and fell into the deadly chasm. However, just before he fell, Sarutul managed to grab his hand and hold the giant's body. With great effort, Sarutul kept holding on to Baal. The tremendous weight made his muscles and bones endure incredible pain, to the point where he felt his arm could tear at any moment. In the midst of that suffering, he wondered why he had to save one of the demon commanders who could one day threaten his life. At that moment, memories of his past as Kim Jong-cheol resurfaced. He recalled a friend who once begged for help after his professor refused to accept his essay. His friend thought only Kim could persuade the professor, not out of respect, but because he was seen as the most obedient and useful worker. Kim Jong-cheol once believed his professor would listen, but ultimately chose to refuse in order to protect himself. He was afraid of being pushed aside, harmed, and losing what he had, so he left his friend without any help. That memory made Kratos realize that maybe in the past he could have helped, if he had dared to try a little harder and put in all his effort. In his mind, he imagined the smile he never got to see from that man. Still holding Baal tightly, Kratos screamed in pain. His muscles felt like they were about to tear, while his bones trembled from the immense pressure. Kratos kept holding Baal's hand and put all his strength, determination, and ability into it. A cracking sound was heard as the bones in his hand broke. Even so, he still lifted Baal's body with one hand and threw him up onto the cliff until he was finally safe. Kratos immediately held his injured hand. Meanwhile, Baal stared at him, confused by the Demon King's willingness to sacrifice himself. Kratos, sweating and breathing heavily, remained standing. He realized that the pain was much lighter compared to the regret of losing someone who could have been his follower. Those words made Baal fall silent. For the first time, he truly admired Kratos, to the point that he unconsciously shed tears. Amidst the strong winds and crashing waves, the heart of the demon commander was finally shaken. When he saw that Baal had survived, Kratos was reminded of his friend from the past. He realized that the help he gave to Baal was something he should have done back then as well. He should have reached out and not let fear overcome his desire to help. The old, buried regret once again filled his heart. In the midst of those feelings, a status window appeared. The system explained that while he hadn't fully mastered the Demon King's body, Kratos had used all his power and gained the respect of Baal, one of the top 4 demon generals. Before he could understand everything, a new notification appeared again. As a reward for his achievements, the system would help Kratos' troops experience happiness that would generate a large number of points. Then the system unlocked a new feature again, the Happy Point Accumulation System. Under the vast sky and towering cliffs, Kratos looked at the notification with curiosity. He didn't fully understand all its uses yet, but he was sure that something important had just begun. Thank you. Kratos felt that the term happy points was very familiar, reminding him of reward points for buying ice cream. He wondered if ice cream existed in this world, but the status window immediately answered that it was impossible. That was when Kratos realized that the system could respond to his thoughts. The system explained that every demon who felt full would generate 1 happy point that could be used to buy stats. Kratos also learned that he could only use 20% of the Demon King's power for now, and had to increase 5 status categories to reach his full strength. When he saw the cost of upgrades, Kratos was surprised because just 1 HP required 50 happy points. The system also explained that those points could be used to strengthen abilities. His blood attack was still at level 1 and required 250 points to level up. Even though that amount was very large, Kratos immediately saw his opportunity. If agriculture improved and demon people lived happier, happy points would keep rising. The more points he had, the stronger he became, and the greater his chances of surviving in this world. His gaze then turned to Baal, who was still shedding tears. Kratos realized that being appreciated and receiving gratitude wasn't such a bad feeling after all. He chuckled softly, but the terrifying face of the Demon King actually made Baal afraid, and see being saved as a debt they had to repay. Not long after, Kratos called Zephyros, Hartog, and Sergei. While lifting the eggshell, he ordered them to fill the shell with the droppings of the seagull demon and throw it down so that the demon troops could catch all of it. The 3 of them were shocked. Meanwhile, Kratos immediately began his plan by throwing the fully filled shells one by one. Moments after being thrown, the eggshells broke and their contents splattered onto the faces, clothes, and bodies of the demon commanders. However, Kratos paid no attention and kept throwing shell after shell. He was determined to farm seriously. After all the materials were gathered, Kratos ordered Zephyros and the demon commanders to make compost fertilizer from seagull demon droppings, eggshells, wood ash, and field soil. Because he had many arms, Sergei was assigned to grind, crush, and mix all the materials. Sergei immediately got angry. As a cold-blooded tyrant, he felt it was beneath him to process fertilizer. Seeing his reaction, Kratos immediately pointed at Asurat, suspecting that Sergei wanted to share the same fate. Sergei immediately understood what he meant, and with rising anger, began crushing and mixing the materials at incredible speed. Seeing this, Kratos was once again reminded that he must not let his guard down around the demon generals. However, he also realized that as the Demon King, he had to continue acting bravely. After the compost was finished, Kratos ordered Hartog to water it using mist. Hartog initially refused, thinking that the moisture would only make the fertilizer smell worse. However, when Kratos pointed toward Asurat again, Hartog immediately understood his intention and quickly carried out the order. A thick mist then descended, soaking the pile of fertilizer. Next, Kratos asked Baal to check the moisture of the fertilizer. The result was as expected and met the desired standards. The next step was to stack the fertilizer in a dry spot and cover it with a blanket made from demon seagull feathers. Kratos looked at the fertilizer they had managed to make and realized the amount was still too little to fertilize the entire land. He needed more fertilizer and had to mobilize more demon subjects. Even though great challenges still awaited, his determination as the Demon King remained unshaken. Accept. Night fell. The moonlight was the only source of illumination in the demon land that had yet to know electricity. In the cold of the night, a small hut stood precariously. Inside, a little girl named Flute lay sick. Meanwhile, her father, Dudu, stayed by her side, full of worry. Flute's body grew weaker, her face pale, her breathing heavy, and tears kept streaming down her cheeks. In her suffering, she begged her father to eat her. However, Dudu immediately refused and couldn't bear to accept her request. No matter how hard their situation was, in the midst of prolonged hunger, Flute only longed for her mother. Hearing that, Dudu was reminded of an old wound that never healed. In the past, when famine struck, a high-level demon came to prey on the young Flute. The girl could only tremble and cry in fear as the monster approached with its terrifying fangs. However, just before the tragedy happened, a woman appeared and stood to protect her. The woman turned and gave a warm, reassuring smile. That's when Flute realized that the figure was her mother. Flute's happiness only lasted for a moment. The high-level demon immediately devoured her mother, leaving a deep wound that continued to haunt her father. For Dudu, Flute was the only reason to keep living amid endless suffering. In the silence of the night, someone arrived and entered their hut. Dudu was shocked to see Kratos, the Demon King, arrive together with Zephyros and Baal. After assessing his condition, Kratos considered Dudu still strong enough to work and ordered Baal to take him away. Dudu immediately panicked and worried about Flute, who would be left alone. He was afraid his daughter would become prey for the high-level demon. However, Baal still picked him up and took him away. Meanwhile, Flute could only cry, unable to do anything. At that time, the number of demons gathered had reached 20, and there were still 30 more that needed to be found. As he was about to leave, Kratos turned around and saw Flute kneeling, begging for her father to be returned. That scene brought back memories for Kim Jang-cheol. Flute's face and expression felt very familiar, just like a character he had encountered in the game. He also remembered that in the past, when playing that game, he had once aimed his weapon at that little girl with the intention of killing her. Flute kept crying, hoping her father would come back. But Kratos kept walking away. He ordered the demon troops to stop all illegal cannibalism practices and asked Zephyros to gather the survivors to start compost fertilizer production. Sometime later, Flute's father was worried about the lack of seeds, even though the land had been fertilized. Kratos didn't answer directly and took him to a location. There, wild purple flowers grew near the place where the demon commanders once hid, and those plants would be cultivated. Flute's father was surprised to learn that the roots of the purple flower couldn't be eaten and could cause severe pain, even death. However, Kratos had understood that from the beginning. According to him, that barren land no longer had any other food suitable for consumption. While pulling out the plant's roots, Kratos believed that they should already have an answer about whether it was suitable to eat. The father became even more confused, until Kratos revealed that most likely Flute was eating it right now. Kratos' terrifying gaze made the father panic. He immediately ran back to the village, calling out to his daughter along the way. When he arrived home, he shouted for Flute not to eat the flower root. However, when he went inside, he found Zephyros and Baal already there, making him break out in a cold sweat. Fear made Flute's father tremble as he saw his daughter eating the purple flower root. However, Flute didn't feel any pain or poisoning. Instead, she felt full. Even so, her father was still worried until he learned that Zephyros and Baal had given her the root since the previous day without causing any problems. Not long after, Kratos came to confirm his belief. He explained that people in distant lands cultivated this poisonous plant over a long period until it became a food source known as potatoes, helping them overcome hunger. Hearing that, Flute was filled with gratitude because a demon king was willing to help a lowly demon like him. At that moment, a status window appeared and informed that some demons felt happy because their stomachs were full. As a result, Kratos gained 1 happiness point and 1 HP point. Kratos fell silent, taking in the change, while Flute once again showed a smile that had long been lost. For the first time, he felt hope and sincerity from Kratos' kindness. That sight brought back Kratos' memories of a little demon he once met in the game, a figure who looked very much like Flute. Seeing that Flute was no longer crying, Kratos realized that being the Demon King didn't mean he always had to be cold. He smiled and hoped that Flute could grow up healthy and strong. However, the smile that he thought was friendly actually looked terrifying on the Demon King's face. Flute became frightened again. He thought all the food given to him was just to make him grow big before eventually being eaten by Kratos. Meanwhile, Kratos was unaware of the misunderstanding and kept smiling, believing it was kind, though it appeared terrifying to others. Days went by, but tension persisted in the Demon King's territory. In the farthest of the 5 demon zones, an ancient archaeological site endured extreme weather, freezing nights and scorching mornings, similar to the Andean highlands. The Andean people once suffered such severe famine that they ate wild poisonous potatoes, unaware of the dangers. However, in order to survive, they found a way to process the poison into food that was safe to eat. Amidst the bustle, Flute's father reported that his task was complete. Kratos then ordered Baal to destroy the pile of potatoes that had been prepared. With great enthusiasm, Baal stomped and crushed them until the ground around him trembled. For 5 days, the potatoes went through a repeated process: frozen at night, thawed in the morning, crushed with Baal's meteor stomp, and then dried by evaporation. After being dried and cooked, the wild poisonous potatoes were finally safe to eat and were given the name kuno, a simple food born from the struggle to survive. After the process was finished, Kratos ordered Zephyros to call the compost makers. He wanted to give them a break and share the freshly cooked kuno. The farmers gathered neatly, and because the supply was limited, each person only received 2 pieces. Seeing the small amount, Zephyros was worried that the food wouldn't be enough for the entire demon army and asked what the next plan was. However, Kratos answered him with full confidence. Kratos emphasized that they would make more kuno, then plant the remaining potatoes to multiply them many times over. However, the compost makers were still doubtful. For them, kuno still came from the poisonous roots that once claimed the lives of their relatives. Flute's father tried to assure them that Kratos had made it safe. Flute himself had eaten it without any problems. Even so, they remained suspicious and saw Kratos' frightening face as a sign of bad intentions. To prove them wrong, Flute's father immediately ate kuno in front of everyone. The atmosphere became tense as they waited for a reaction. However, after a while, he remained healthy and proved that the food was safe to eat. With great enthusiasm, Flute's father praised Kratos and shouted his name. The doubts of the compost makers disappeared. They immediately devoured Kuno eagerly because their hunger was much greater than their fear. After eating, they lined up again in front of Kratos. They admitted that the Demon King truly had given them food and performed a real miracle. Cheers and praise continued to echo throughout the area. However, Kratos just stood still with a flat expression. To him, all those praises and shouts sounded so foreign. Kratos thought the cheers sounded like a laxative commercial and wished he could replace them with something better. On the other hand, Zephyros silently admired Kratos, who was able to create food from barren land. However, he still kept a flat expression. He was beginning to think Kratos could truly end hunger in the demon lands. Not long after, a status window appeared and informed him that the happiness of the demon troops had increased by 50 points from enjoying delicious food. So the total became 51 points. Kratos was surprised and realized that those points were a source of power that could enhance his abilities. Even so, after considering it, he chose to save all the points for now. While making plans, Kratos divided the troops' tasks into compost makers and wild potato gatherers. Zephyros then announced that anyone who brought wild potatoes would receive a meal ticket that could be exchanged for Kuno. The news immediately raised the hopes of the demons and quickly spread throughout the region. Demons gathered to dig for wild potatoes. Sergei and Hartog kept making compost despite complaining about the smell. Meanwhile, Kuno's production continued. After that, Kratos ordered his troops to move Asurat, who was still tied to the power pole, to a new location, and then used a blood attack again as before. The blood spread by Kratos was part of his effort to add nitrogen to the farmland. After the compost was finished, he decided it was time to move on to the next stage. However, the compost needed to cover a vast area. Meanwhile, the demon farmers survived on just a few grains of Kuno daily, making the work feel exhausting. In the midst of that situation, the increasingly weakened Asurat once again begged for death. Annoyed by his voice, Kratos launched a blood attack, not to kill him, but to silence him. After that, he realized that even the Heavenly Elite King wouldn't be able to keep working continuously with limited food. So he chose to wait and not force his workers. In the palace, Kratos asked about the progress of the request for help to the other regional kings. Zephyros explained that all expeditions had been stopped. The troops were redirected to the agricultural project, and couriers had been sent to the 4 zone rulers. However, no replies had been received yet. Kratos suspected the couriers may have collapsed from hunger, risking the large-scale compost distribution. Meanwhile, in Zone 1, Demon Kint, known as the Cliff of Death, an aide reported that Kratos had started farming and managed to produce food. Upon hearing the news, Demon King Kint Sarutul, the father of the ghosts, just grinned. The large-bodied demon with a long beard believed that the more demons died, the greater his power would become. So he considered Kratos' efforts as merely a way to delay the war. By preventing starvation, Kratos was seen as trying to influence Sarutul. However, Sarutul rejected that idea. It was revealed that the couriers heading to Zones 2, 3, and 4 had been killed. So the other rulers never learned about Kratos' agricultural project. For Sarutul, demons were supposed to starve to death or become his food. Driven by this conviction, Sarutul rose and resolved to kill Kratos to become the next demon king. He then summoned his aide, Pikamir, and ordered him to destroy all of Kratos' agricultural preparations. Pikamir accepted the task with great enthusiasm. When night fell and the demons went home, only Asurat was still tied to the electric pole. Pikamir came, thinking Kratos' treatment was very cruel, and then assured Asurat that Sarutul would make him his right-hand man after Kratos was dead. After that, he summoned his ghost troops to destroy Kratos' farmland. The ghosts quickly spread out and found a pile of compost. Pikamir ordered them to spread it all over the land and mix it as deep as possible into the soil. Without hesitation, the ghosts broke up, turned, and spread the compost throughout the area. Meanwhile, Pikamir laughed, convinced he had ruined Kratos' hard work. However, Asurat, who witnessed everything, actually thought they were foolish. He remembered that Kratos and Zephyros actually planned to break up and evenly mix the compost so that the soil would become fertile. The hard work that was impossible for the farmers to finish was now being done willingly by the ghosts. Meanwhile, Pikamir kept feeling victorious. Asurat realized that they had accidentally completed the hardest part of Kratos' agricultural project. Thank you. The night passed, but the ghost army kept tirelessly spreading compost. One ghost complained, feeling their work was endless. However, his companion reminded him not to be lazy while doing their duties. Ghost 2718 was then surprised to see Ghost 1341, who was usually lazy, now working with great enthusiasm. Ghost 1341 admitted that he felt satisfaction every time he saw the land being plowed and tidied up, as if his work had a purpose. The other ghosts also cheered. They considered that having such a purpose in life was worth fighting for, even if it made them look foolish. When the sun rose, the ghosts realized that they had been working all night. For them, dawn meant the end of existence. However, there was no fear or regret, only satisfaction, because for the first time, they felt they had done something meaningful. One by one, they disappeared with the morning light. In the distance, Pikamir stood under an umbrella, shedding tears, praising the sacrifice of the ghosts and hoping they would rest in peace. After that, he decided to see Kratos' reaction to the field they had worked on. Meanwhile, Kratos and Zephyros walked toward the potato warehouse. Kratos explained that their work would become slower and take more time. When they arrived at the warehouse, they found a large pile of potatoes filling the room. Kratos saw the potatoes were still dormant and knew they wouldn't sprout if planted immediately. According to him, potatoes need time to recover after being pulled from the ground. He then thought about storing them at 4 degrees Celsius for 2 to 3 weeks, before moving them to a warm and dark place to make them sprout faster. He once wanted to use Sergei's cold ability, but gave up because Sergei is still prone to going on a rampage. Meanwhile, Hartog also often causes trouble. Kratos then considered warming the storage room up to 23 degrees by having the farmers exercise. However, he canceled this plan because they were too weak. Finally, Kratos took Zephyros to the field to continue adding nitrogen. However, when they arrived, he was shocked. All the compost had been evenly mixed. The soil was neatly dug and a pungent smell filled the area, causing Aseroth to faint. Kratos had no idea how such a big job could be finished so quickly. Behind a tree, Pikamir watched Kratos' surprise with satisfaction. He was sure that he had destroyed the field. But without realizing it, Baal approached from behind, easily lifted him up, and dragged him in front of Kratos. Kratos was surprised to see Pikamir being brought by Baal. He recognized him as the aide from Deathcliff and thought he had come in response to a request for help. Before Pikamir could answer, Kratos hit him, suspecting he was hiding something. Despite the pain, Pikamir stayed silent and insisted he wouldn't talk, even under threat of death. Kratos hit him again, then realized his actions were rather harsh. At that moment, a status window appeared and reminded him to use the 51 happiness points he had. He used 50 points to increase his HP, so his strength rose from 20 to 30%. After that increase, Kratos hit Pikamir again, until he finally confessed that he had sabotaged the fields to make the demon army starve again. He also revealed that the murder of the couriers was carried out under direct orders from King Sarutul. That night, Kratos considered how Sarutul's actions contributed to the famine in the demon land. Zephyros called it an open betrayal, and considered that this situation could be used to pressure Sarutul while also silencing criticism over the suspension of the expedition. In addition, Sarutul was also the main obstacle to their agriculture. Kratos then concluded that Sarutul had to be removed. Meanwhile, Zephyros questioned how to capture him because he was able to turn into a ghost. Kratos remembered that in the game, Sarutul could move throughout the land of the dead like a spirit that was hard to catch. Because of that, instead of chasing the main one, he chose to lure its insects out. On the other hand, Flute approached Aseroth, who was still tied to the pole. Innocently, he thanked him because he believed Aseroth's sacrifice allowed the demons to return to farming. Hearing that, Aseroth became furious because he felt insulted by a child and swore to kill Kratos once he was free. Flute got scared and immediately ran away. Not long after, a call to gather rang out. From a distance, Aseroth saw Kratos leading a festive celebration with singing, dancing, and banners congratulating the second lightning rod. Aseroth realized that he was the first lightning rod and once thought his freedom was near. However, his hopes were dashed when Pikamir was brought and tied to a similar pole right next to him. Before he could understand the situation, Kratos launched another blood attack. Aseroth finally realized that they were only adding a new lightning rod, not freeing him. Lightning struck both poles again, causing Aseroth and Pikamir to faint. Elsewhere, Sarutul watched everything through a crystal ball. His eyes widened, and his anger exploded when he saw Pikamir being used as a lightning rod as well. Kratos' attacks kept coming relentlessly. With one more lightning rod, he attacked more freely. From a distance, Sarutul watched Pikamir grow weaker and became furious because his subordinate kept being tortured. Suddenly, Kratos stopped his attack after seeing a scout bird on top of a tree. He immediately recognized it as a creature that had appeared in the game, then realized that Sarutul had been watching them all along. His resolve hardened to make Sarutul regret his attempt to ruin their hard work. The next day, Flute helped dig the field with his small shovel. Asurat watched him in amazement. Flute wanted to join in the work because everyone had worked so hard for their farm. Asurat then turned his attention to Pikamir, who had unknowingly helped plow Kratos' field. Hearing that, Flute thanked Pikamir for his help and for acting as a lightning rod. That innocent test made Pikamir smile, while Asurat thought he had lost his mind. Asurat also doubted Flute's efforts, because the barren land and unsprouted potatoes seemed impossible to yield anything. But Flute suddenly ran off, leaving him behind. Inside the palace, Kratos and Zephyros discussed their plan to face Sarutul again. Zephyros doubted that Sarutul would come or be trapped by the bait. However, Kratos was sure that Sarutul would send his troops first. Therefore, he ordered all the demons to get ready and kill anyone who came in Sarutul's name. Not long after, Baal saw Sarutul's scouting bird passing by and immediately ordered the troops to get ready. Meanwhile, Sarutul thought Kratos was too confident. The goal was not to save Pikamir, but to destroy Kratos' farmland. When night fell, Sarutul sent the Seysetling ghost troops to destroy all the potatoes in the warehouse. With great enthusiasm, they managed to sneak inside, but were immediately shocked because Kratos was already waiting there. The Demon King remained calm because everything was going according to his plan. Kratos remembered his defeat when facing the Seysetling troops in the game. As the second elite unit of Sarutul, they were able to cling to their opponents, accelerate aging, and mimic the enemy's abilities. But this time, Kratos had found their weakness, which was the lightning element. He immediately injured his hand and prepared to attack. Realizing the trap, Seysetling's troops panicked and tried to flee. But the warehouse door was already covered with Kratos' blood, deliberately spread earlier. Channeling lightning through the blood, electricity surged through the warehouse, overwhelming Seysetling's troops with fear. Kratos increased the flow of his lightning, making the attack much stronger. Seysetling's troops began to get injured and weakened. Seeing this opportunity, he called the farmers' troops to launch a physical attack. The farmers immediately stormed the warehouse with weapons in hand. They fought with great spirit, hoping for a better harvest. Even though they were thin and weak, Kratos realized they were still a great force that could not be underestimated. One by one, Seysetling's troops were defeated. Seeing this victory, Kratos felt even more suited to be a cruel, intelligent, and merciless demon king. However, in the middle of the battle, he saw one Seysetling who was still untouched and immediately moved to chase after him. Suddenly, Flute shouted from among the pile of potatoes. Kratos just realized that the little girl was there, while one Seysetling was moving toward her. Flute's father immediately panicked and called out to his daughter. Kratos decided that no Seysetling should escape. He grabbed a potato to attack, but his reach wasn't enough, so he threw it at the enemy. The potato hit the Seysetling's head, then bounced off and confused the creature. Not long after, something strange happened. The potato sprouted before their eyes. After falling onto another pile, the last Seysetling managed to escape, but Kratos' attention was completely focused on the sprouting potato. He quickly realized that only the potatoes that touched Seysetling were changing. His memories of the game came back to him. The Seysetling troops had the ability to accelerate aging, including speeding up the biological clock of potatoes to make them sprout faster. Kratos' eyes immediately lit up. Without thinking twice, he lifted Flute and laughed loudly at his new discovery, even though his face still looked terrifying. Seeing that, Flute became even more frightened. A moment later, Kratos put him down just like that and immediately became lost in thought. He quickly called the farmers and canceled the plan to lure Sarutul out of hiding. While holding the sprouted potato, Kratos realized the great advantage he had just discovered. Now, they wouldn't be the ones waiting for Sarutul to come, but instead, they would be the ones to attack Sarutul's lair first. Days passed, and the blazing sun scorched the fields. In his weakened state, Asurat began to question the reason he was still alive. He gazed at the sky with gratitude, but hunger soon brought him back to reality. Not long after, Flute came bringing a bowl of kuno to thank him for the tip about the potato sprouts. Asarat immediately realized that Kratos had managed to grow potatoes and produce a lot of food. The Kuno looked very tempting to him after he'd been hungry for so long. Seeing Asarat starving, Flute tried to throw the Kuno into his mouth. The first throw failed and hit his eye, triggering Asarat's anger. But Flute tried again, and this time part of the Kuno managed to get into his mouth, although some pieces still hit his face. Asarat immediately devoured the food. After starving for a long time, the simple Kuno tasted incredibly delicious. At the same time, the system informed Kratos that his troops' happiness had reached a high level, bringing the happiness points to 302. Seeing that number, Kratos calculated a supply of about 300 Kuno for all members, including Flute. He chose to save those points for the future conquest of Sarutul. Not long after, Kratos summoned all the farmers and fired them up for the harvest. With enthusiastic cheers, the troops moved toward Deathcliff, the territory of Sarutul. Thank you. When they arrived at the suspension bridge connecting the two large cliffs, the guardian ghosts were immediately filled with fear. The ghosts quickly destroyed the bridge before Kratos' troops could cross. The bridge collapsed into the ravine, and they were sure the enemy wouldn't be able to get through. But then, Kratos jumped toward the cliff. Everyone was shocked, while the ghosts laughed at him. The laughter ended when they saw Kratos moving along the rock wall, using the method he once used to collect demon seagull droppings. By taking off and putting his clothes back on, Kratos kept climbing using a method that was impossible to understand. Slowly, he managed to reach the top of the cliff, leaving the ghosts filled with fear. From above, he signaled that everything was going according to plan, while Zephyros considered the oddity to be nothing out of the ordinary. While moving toward enemy territory, Kratos thought that the ghosts must be afraid of potatoes. However, he also considered the possibility of advancing without carrying any weapons. On the other hand, Sarutul saw Kratos coming alone without any potatoes, then ordered the ghosts to attack. In his opinion, a single small attack would be enough to change the situation. As the ghosts approached, Kratos stopped and used the quantum leap technique. He jumped onto the cliff until his body seemed to be embedded in the rock. A moment later, his body slowly disappeared, as if he truly merged with the cliff wall itself. The ghost army stared in horror as Kratos continued to perform quantum leaps. His body appeared and disappeared inside the cliff, sometimes even without clothes, moving so fast that it was hard to follow. No one understood how he was able to pass through stone as if defying the laws of the world. Amid all this, Kratos remembered that there were 19 ghosts in the area. Calmly, he herded them to a predetermined spot. After stopping, the ghosts immediately surrounded him. Seeing Kratos starting to tire, they were sure that the Demon King had reached his limit. But for Kratos, he was not just the Demon King, but a veteran player who had conquered the game many times. At the same time, Zephyros ordered the farmer troops to begin their attack. Potatoes flew through the sky and struck the ghosts. Sprouts began to grow from their surfaces. Kratos looked at the results with satisfaction, because those sprouting potatoes would be taken home to be planted. Zephyros finally realized that Kratos' plan had been right from the start. Previously, Kratos had asked him to lead the farmers along a certain path on the ancient map. Even though it looked like a dead end, Kratos knew about a secret path he had discovered while exploring the Death Cliff in the game. Back then, he was suspicious because one of the walls had a different texture. After breaking it, a hidden door opened that led to the Eye Corridor. It was the location of the first battle against Sarutul in the game. Kratos was confused about how to reach that area in the game until he finally found the secret path after clearing the entire region. In that place was a transfiguration potion, the crystallized fruit of the ancient giant's final wish, letting its user change form according to their deepest desire. If that item really existed in this world, Kratos intended to take it. Meanwhile, the farmers cheered happily because the dead potatoes finally sprouted. They immediately gathered them. Meanwhile, Flute's father was grateful because now he and his daughter had hoped to live and eat properly. However, Kratos suddenly remembered his past as Kim Jong-chil, when an old woman once promised him warm food while he was starving. Before that memory ended, along with the sound of an ambulance siren. His face turned gloomy, and he was determined to get rid of anyone who stood in their way of getting food. The farmers immediately welcomed that determination with cheers. Not long after, Baal offered to help face the powerful Sarutul. But Kratos asked him to keep helping with moving the potatoes, because facing Sarutul was the responsibility of a leader. Elsewhere, Sarutul knelt before the great frozen spirit heart, begging for strength, troops, and greater power. But before his prayer was finished, Kratos suddenly appeared and kicked him, sending him flying. Sarutul was left confused, holding his nose in pain. Sarutul was confused, wondering how Kratos had found that secret place. Meanwhile, Kratos was thinking of only one thing. The time had come to wipe out all the pests standing in the way of their future. Kratos stood tall in front of Sarutul without hesitation. On the other hand, Sarutul thought he was foolish for coming alone. In an instant, his body transformed into a terrifying ghostly spirit. He was sure Kratos had never seen his true power. Kratos had seen it often while playing. He remembered Sarutul fleeing on the cliffs of death, making him defeat all the underlings before reaching the frozen spirit heart chamber, an ancient dragon artifact that bound spirits to the world through a soul-piercing cold. That was where the final battle always took place, and Kratos understood Sarutul's true power. Now, Sarutul showed that ability again. His body turned into a giant, increasingly fierce whirlwind. He admitted Kratos' strength, but was confident he'd still win. Not long after, Sarutul did something even more surprising. He transformed into a figure exactly like Kratos, copying his appearance and all of his stats. Seeing that, Kratos remembered the final battle in the game, when he always used a character with high attack but low defense. But this time, it was different. Sarutul only copied the version of Kratos that hadn't reached his full power. Realizing this made Kratos smirk slyly. Without waiting, Sarutul immediately attacked with all his abilities. Meanwhile, a status window appeared, showing that Kratos had started using the 302 happiness points he had collected. Kratos didn't hesitate to spend 50 happiness points to increase his agility from 20 to 30%. He moved more lightly, making Sarutul's attacks easy to dodge. When his opponent lowered his guard, Kratos quickly kicked him in the stomach. Sarutul attacked again, but Kratos used another 50 points to increase his strength to 30%. He blocked the punch directly, surprising Sarutul because it was his own arm that felt the pain. For Kratos, farming and fighting both require strategy. As Sarutul's anger peaked, Kratos once again increased his magic and mind stats from 20 to 30, using 50 happiness points each. His power surged drastically. Without giving him a chance, Kratos unleashed his signature lightning. The bolt struck Sarutul and destroyed his body. The forms of spirit and ice slowly melted, turning into a powerless lump. The battle ended with Kratos' victory. The status window appeared again. HP, mind, strength, agility, and magic have now all reached 30%. Not long after, a new notification appeared. Kratos' power level increased and unlocked a new skill called Farmer King's Throne, which requires 100 happiness points to develop further. The reward Kratos received turned out not to be a weapon, but the Farmer King's Throne, which comes equipped with various farming tools. Although strange, he considers it useful for developing his farm. However, Sarutul, who had turned into liquid, began to move again and questioned the end of the battle. Kratos remained calm because he already recognized this second phase, just like in the game. Soon after, Sarutul revealed his true form as a terrifying ancient dragon. Kratos acknowledged Sarutul's power was remarkable for a boss before the final zone. He remained calm. At that moment, Baal, Zephyros, and the army of farmers arrived carrying weapons. Kratos stated that he came from the final boss zone. Meanwhile, Sarutul began to realize that he was now alone facing a large army. Sarutul tried to calm the situation, but the army of farmers immediately charged while shouting harvest cheers. Sarutul faced repeated attacks because he was seen as a threat to their farming. In the middle of the battle, Kratos felt that a fair fight was no longer possible. He chose a smarter way to make Sarutul lose quickly. The status window showed the development of his abilities. Then he spent almost all of his happiness points to activate the Farmer King's Throne, leaving only 2 points. Instantly, a green light descended from the sky, bringing Kratos' new throne. The chair slid into the middle of the battle and landed hard right on Sarutul's head. The farmer troops immediately cheered, praising Kratos as the true demon king who was able to end Sarutul's resistance. Meanwhile, Kratos just stood silently watching everything. After the victory was achieved, Kratos joined in cheering with his troops. On the other hand, Asurat and Pikamir were still tied up as lightning rods. Pikamir's faint voice confused Asurat, until he finally realized that Sarutul's defeat had caused Pikamir to die, and his soul to go to the afterlife. Now Asurat was alone again. The field was plowed, potato sprouts appeared, and pests threatening the harvest were eliminated. Kratos and his troops eagerly went home with sprouted potatoes to plant right away. As they were leaving, a strange sound came from the frozen spirit's heart. making Kratos and Zephyrus turn around. Then, a status window appeared and informed them that the Cliff of Death had been completed 20 times. Kratos wondered whether the 19 completions he did in the game were also counted. As a reward, a hidden event was triggered. The heart of the frozen spirit began to tremble and emit smoke. The system explained that the original power long trapped inside it had finally awakened. Instantly, the heart of the frozen spirit opened. Kratos was still confused when a very cute little dragon appeared from inside. The two of them looked at each other. Then the little dragon introduced itself in a gentle voice. "Tybon, thank you." The little dragon repeated its name in an innocent voice. Kratos approached and picked it up. Meanwhile, the tiny creature considered Kratos as the father it had been waiting for all this time. After living in darkness since it hatched, it finally felt like it had found someone to rely on. Kratos just laughed at its cute behavior. However, the Demon King's smile still looked frightening. It made the little dragon tremble, even though it kept hugging him tightly and calling him Papa. Around them, the farmers cheered and talked about the possibility of eating the dragon. Kratos also thought that raising it a bit longer would produce more meat. Hearing that, the little dragon immediately became gloomy, thinking that the father it had just found also intended to eat it. Not long after, Kratos and his troops returned to the Demon Lands. Upon arriving there, they were greeted by the people who had gathered to await the return of their families. The usually gloomy atmosphere turned warm and full of gratitude. The little dragon observed the scene and for the first time felt the warmth of their happiness. He began to think that the demons might not be as frightening as he had imagined. However, Kratos still considered themselves to be terrifying creatures. The next day, under the blazing sun, the little dragon sat pensively inside the palace. When he turned around, he saw Kratos still sitting and thinking about something, with the same terrifying Demon King expression as always. Seeing Kratos' face, the little dragon immediately looked away. His fear hadn't completely disappeared. Meanwhile, Kratos was busy thinking about suitable food for him. He had heard that baby dragons ate processed gems, but their territory was only filled with scrap iron and junk. Not long after, Zephyrus came with a report about the difficulties in building the terraces. Kratos wasn't surprised, because the land they owned was filled with rocks. The deeper they dug, the more rocks appeared, making the land look more like a mine than a field. Hearing the conversation, the little dragon worried he might also be forced to work like the farmers. On the other hand, Kratos realized that clearing all the rocks would require a lot of time, effort, and a large supply of kuno. Even help from other kings might not be enough. He once wished he had abilities like a comic book character who could summon giant creatures to easily clear the fields. When he turned, he saw Flute still digging with her small shovel. Though exhausted, she kept working diligently, leaving Kratos silent in admiration of her perseverance. But the same question came back to his mind. How could he get rid of all those rocks quickly? Suddenly, a warning shout was heard. A massive blade storm was moving toward the field, swirling fiercely and ready to destroy anything in its path. Panic spread across Kratos' face, having faced that deadly disaster in the game before, and knowing anyone caught would be torn apart instantly. Kratos immediately ordered all the farmers to take cover behind the rocks. They ran to find a safe place, while Kratos carried the little dragon and also tried to save himself. Amid the raging wind, he realized farmers' greatest enemy wasn't monsters or war, but unpredictable natural disasters. While everyone was seeking shelter, Flute instead ran toward the whirlwind to save Aseroth. Kratos and Flute's father panicked when they saw what he was doing. Without hesitation, Kratos gave the little dragon to Flute's father, asking him to protect it no matter what, then hurried after Flute. Baal considered that action as courting death, but Kratos couldn't bear to lose his worker and lightning rod, because farming also meant protecting their lives. On the other hand, Aseroth kept telling Flute to leave, but the little girl kept trying to remove the lightning rod. As the vortex got closer, Kratos finally arrived and told Flute to get out of the way. With one kick, he broke the pole, causing Aseroth to fall while still tied up. Flute kept trying to untie the knot, even though Aseroth was sure the effort was impossible. Moments later, Kratos lifted Flute with one hand and carried Aseroth and the pole piece in the other. The little dragon realized the father he admired wasn't as strong as he appeared. However, with the last of his strength, Kratos kept running, carrying both of them to a safe shelter. From a distance, the little dragon watched anxiously as the sword wind kept chasing Kratos, Aseroth, and Flute. The pressure grew stronger, making it harder for Kratos to move. Meanwhile, when the wind started to hurt his body, he realized the danger and hugged Flute tightly to protect her. Not long after, Kratos fell and the lightning rod slipped from his hand. However, he still kept Flute in his arms. Seeing this, the little dragon broke free from Flute's father and flew to help Kratos. The little dragon then gathered its strength and breathed out a freezing cold breath. Unexpectedly, that breath weakened the sword wind and pushed it away. Kratos then realized that the cold air had cut off the flow of hot air supporting the vortex. In order to save the figure he considered his father, the little dragon kept breathing out its cold breath without stopping. Even though its body was weakening, Kratos didn't want the little dragon to sacrifice itself for him. Slowly, the sword wind finally moved away and its pressure eased. Seeing the opportunity, Baal, Flute's father, and Zephyros quickly rushed over to Kratos, Asurat, and Flute, then took them away from the dangerous area. Thank you. Moonlight covered the quiet palace, while Kratos rested after going through various battles and hard work. In the middle of the night, Hartog and Sergi quietly came to his room. Convinced that this was the best time to get rid of the Demon King and fight for the throne after Baal and Asurat, they opened the door with determination and approached Kratos' bed. But as they were about to attack, both of them froze. Kratos' eyes were open, and his face looked terrifying under the moonlight. They thought Kratos had been waiting for their arrival from the very beginning. Before they could move, a voice from behind stopped them. Baal and Asurat had discovered the plot. Baal emphasized that Kratos was resting and should not be disturbed. Sergi and Hartog were also surprised to find out that the frightening expression was just Kratos' sleeping face. Baal also warned that he wouldn't hold back if Kratos were to wake up. Hartog finally backed down, but questioned Asurat's choice to support the Demon King, who wanted to turn the Demon Nation into farmers. Asurat admitted that he owed his life to Kratos and chose to repay him for now. Without making any promises about the future, Hartog reminded again that planting potatoes had brought many problems. Meanwhile, hunger and crop failure still threatened. Asurat understood that, but he remembered Flute, who kept digging the ground with his little shovel, proof that even a child is willing to fight to be free from hunger. Asurat finally understood that surviving and fighting hunger always requires taking risks. If he had to risk his life, he would rather fight for something meaningful. Hearing that, Sergi and Hartog fell silent, then left, convinced that everyone would regret that choice. Not long after, Kratos woke up and looked at Asurat. Asurat emphasized that he was not taking Kratos' side, but was merely repaying his life debt. However, Kratos was actually upset because the lightning rod was roaming freely, and immediately struck Asurat with lightning until he passed out. Kratos then headed to the field, followed by Baal, who was carrying Asurat. He intended to clear the rocks, but Baal revealed that most of the stones had already disappeared thanks to Zephyros. Curious, they immediately went to check the situation there. When they arrived at the field, Kratos saw Zephyros leading the farmers to gather the remaining stones. Zephyros then pointed to the sky, where Tybon was flying while eating the stones one by one. The little dragon devoured the stones to grow bigger and strong enough to face the sword winds in the future. When he heard Kratos calling, Tybon immediately came over and received praise. Kratos then made a new plan, appointing Tybon as the Sky Watcher who would freeze the sword winds before the disaster could grow. Zephyros then reported that the field was almost ready to be planted with potatoes. However, he said that the distribution of rewards also increased Kuno consumption, so they needed to consider larger production for the future. Kratos thought that additional Kuno production was not yet necessary. For him, agriculture was still facing more urgent problems, ranging from natural disasters and high costs to other issues that needed to be resolved quickly. Night fell, and the palace became quiet again. In her room, Sergi sat in front of the mirror while removing her head covering, revealing the beauty that had been hidden all this time. She was still bothered by the lingering manure smell after refusing to help with farming and choosing to hide. Soon after, Kratos' voice called from outside. Sergi was surprised because the Demon King almost never visited her. When Kratos asked for her help, Sergi immediately refused, but Kratos persisted and eventually broke in using the technique he once used to climb cliffs. Sergi was angry because her room was broken into, but her shock grew even greater when Kratos suddenly knelt down. Kratos explained that he needed Sergi's help and was willing to humble himself to save costs, especially because he needed her sharp dagger. Hearing that, Sergi misunderstood and started to feel embarrassed. However, Kratos was confused to see her acting differently than usual. Finally, Sergi decided to listen to his request. Kratos then took her to the crowded potato warehouse. There, he explained that each potato had to be cut into several pieces before planting to make it more efficient. Hearing this explanation, all of Sergei's hopes and assumptions collapsed. He just realized that Sarutul had only come in the first place to ask for his help cutting potatoes. Kratos reminded Sergei to only split potatoes that had 4 or more sprouts, and to make sure each piece had a balanced number of sprouts. After giving instructions, he asked Sergei to start working right away, but Sergei stayed silent. Annoyed, Kratos threw a potato at him. Sergei immediately deflected it with quick reflexes, then started working. His knife moved swiftly, turning the pile of potatoes into neat seed pieces in no time. Kratos was amazed by his precision and speed. He praised Sergei's skills, which he considered unmatched. That praise made Sergei nervous, and he covered it up with anger, thinking Kratos was just messing with him. Not long after, Kratos approached and cleaned Sergei's knife with a cloth so that the potato residue wouldn't spread disease to the other seed pieces. That sincerity once again left Sergei confused and awkward. Kratos sincerely asked for help, since only Sergei could cut the potatoes that well and preserve the Kuno supply. Finally, Sergei agreed to help, thinking that Kratos really needed him. While Kratos fetched hot water and extra cloths, they spent the night cutting potatoes. Sergei kept working perfectly, while Kratos kept up the spirit with his off-key singing. From the warehouse roof, Hartog watched everything and thought Sergei was foolish for being swayed by simple praise. Under the scorching sun, Asurot continued to endure his fate as a lightning rod. In his suffering, he once again questioned the meaning of life. At that moment, Flute came carrying Kuno that the farmers had set aside and invited him to play food toss as usual. However, Asurot's pride as one of the 4 demon generals made him continue to refuse and maintain his tough attitude. Flute threw Kuno toward Asurot again, even though his first throw missed. Unconsciously, the two of them kept spending time playing toss with Kuno together. From a distance, Hartog watched them. Hartog looked at Asurot cynically and thought that the demon general had lost his pride. Not long after, Kratos announced that all the seed potatoes had been cut and dried. All the preparations were complete, and the time to plant the potatoes had finally arrived. Flute and the farmers immediately gathered with Kratos, Baal, and Zephyros, filled with hope for their future. Hartog kept watching from a distance, thinking that Baal and the other commanders were foolish. Meanwhile, the farmers thanked Sergei for his help in cutting the seed potatoes. Though he claimed he didn't do it for them, Sergei's face still turned red, leaving Hartog both disgusted and confused by the change in one of the 4 demon commanders. Seeing the demon people be moved just by potatoes, Hartog looked down on them even more. He was sure that only he was truly intelligent and worthy of becoming the demon king in the future. In the fields, the farmers began planting seeds, while Kratos kept giving instructions. He explained that some of the potato sprouts would have to be thinned out later. After stopping Baal's off-topic response, Kratos explained that each seed usually produces 3 to 6 sprouts, then asked whether having more sprouts is better. A farmer thought that the more sprouts, the more profitable it would be, but Kratos explained that having fewer sprouts is actually better. Hartog, who overheard, was annoyed, but explained that too many sprouts compete for nutrients, preventing optimal potato root development. Hartog's explanation was unintentionally overheard by Kratos. He was surprised Hartog understood agriculture, while Hartog found the link between sprouts, roots, and nutrients easy to grasp. When asked about the ideal number of sprouts, Hartog explained that 2 sprouts are the best choice. 1 sprout is indeed more efficient, but if it gets damaged, the potato can't grow. Kratos then asked how to increase the harvest yield, and Hartog replied that the soil must be loosened, given compost, and plowed so that air circulation is good. Weeds and pests also need to be removed because they compete for nutrients. Hearing that, Kratos asked all the farmers to give a round of applause. Cheers and praise echoed, calling Hartog a genius. Childhood memories of his mother always calling him slow resurfaced, making Hartog feel touched by the recognition for the first time. Kratos then asked Hartog to become the captain of the farmers' army, considering him a wise and intelligent demon. However, Hartog refused, because he believed that intelligence should be used to conquer enemies, not to manage fields. Instead, Kratos ordered the entire army to pay tribute to their best elite demon. Cheers echoed once again. Although he kept grumbling, Hartog finally gave in and agreed to lead the farmer troops, albeit reluctantly. The farmers cheered even more enthusiastically. At the same time, a status window appeared and showed that Kratos had won 4 psychological wars. When the explanation appeared, Kratos was surprised to learn he had unknowingly exploited Baal's childhood trauma, making him an extremely loyal subordinate. The status window explained that Kratos had given Asurat something he had never had before, a friend, which gradually eroded his cruelty. Sergei, unfamiliar with love, began to soften. Meanwhile, Hartog, who always sought recognition, finally gained confidence. A long time later, the status window displayed a new ability that could be obtained with 200 happiness points called Bloodshot Eyes. Kratos was surprised because that ability had never existed in the game, so he suspected that it was another original power like the Farmer King's throne. The status window said, Bloodshot Eyes let Kratos see a target's future up to 6 hours ahead, whether living or not. A moment later, additional information appeared stating that even the sky could be targeted by that ability. Kratos finally realized its true meaning. If the future of the sky could be seen, then he would be able to know the weather conditions several hours in advance. For him, that ability was far more valuable than combat power, because he had just gained a weather forecast. On the border between the abandoned land of the parademons and the human world stood the peaceful exile village. Dirok and young Master Elbiha arrived, shattering the calm. They were grateful for Elbiha's recovery. Elbiha responded with gratitude and a simple hope for a stronger life in the future. Dirok expressed his dream of becoming rich, a nobleman, and having many subordinates, although Elbiha responded by saying that it would be difficult to achieve even in the next life. They then focused on Aget Kimchi, whom Elbiha called Mukunjinim for losing his skills, and recalled his real name. He was hesitant to join the journey back to the kingdom because he didn't know who he was except that he wasn't human. His memories of the past were marked by the villagers' suspicious looks when he arrived, causing him to question if he belonged in the human world. Elbiha and Dirok fell silent in the face of that doubt, before Elbiha suggested that Aget Kimchi change his clothes. Sometime later, they prepared to leave, though Aget Kimchi's clothes still clung to him as if fused with his body, even though he wanted to remove them. On the way, Elbiha stopped to greet and thank the people of Exile Village, while vowing to fight for their future after returning to the kingdom. Aget Kimchi observed all of this in silence, knowing that Elbiha was a noble envoy from the kingdom assigned to investigate the area near the demon land. But unlike what he imagined, she did not show any arrogance at all. On the other hand, Aget Kimchi's polite and humble attitude made her start to question herself, wondering what she was like in the past. Fragments of memories about various battles resurfaced as she spent her days in an endless cycle of slaughter. That thought made her fall into deep contemplation, until she began to wonder if there was anything else she could do besides killing. Meanwhile, in the demon land, the farmers cheered happily as the potato sprouts finally grew. Baal and Sergei checked directly and found proof of success in the form of green sprouts emerging from the ground. Flute ran to deliver the news to Asurat. However, he still didn't care, because he was still tied up as a lightning rod. Not long after, Kratos ordered the next stage, which was mounding soil around the sprouts. Hartog explained that the process was to cover the base of the sprouts with soil, to protect the potatoes from sunlight that could damage their quality and even produce toxins. After the explanation, Kratos asked the farmers to applaud, filling the field with cheers again. In the midst of the crowd, Kratos instead tested his new ability, Bloodshot Eyes, which he obtained with 200 happiness points. However, that ability required him to stare without blinking for 200 seconds, making his eyes red, watery, and feel extremely painful. The farmers mistakenly believed he was crying tears of joy about the successful harvest. Shortly after, the status window showed Bloodshot Eyes was activated, and Kratos glimpsed the sky's future. The next 6 hours were forecasted to be clear and dry. These conditions were considered ideal for deploying the humidifier device that had been prepared. Kratos fed stones to Tybon and then told him to rest, since there would be no threat of sword winds that day. The calm ended when Zephyros arrived urgently to report that a subordinate of the second king, Planus, had arrived. At the palace, Laploa and Fasal delivered the news that after Kratos halted the expedition and switched to agriculture, the third king, Roster, launched a major attack on Planus' territory and intended to seize the Demon King's throne. Kratos was upset. Meanwhile, Zephyros explained that if Planus fell and joined Roster, their combined forces would become a major threat. Kratos realized that was true. Even though their levels are low, their numbers are huge and dangerous if united. Kratos was faced with a choice between war and agriculture, realizing that he couldn't abandon the fields. He considered the shortcut through the warp well in the game. However, it's possible that facility doesn't work in the real world. Meanwhile, the territory of the Second King stretches far from the cliffs of death to the swamps of destruction. a distance much greater than in the game version. He was briefly confused, imagining how to manage both war and agriculture at the same time. However, he realized that as the Demon King, he didn't need to go directly to the battlefield. Not long after, Sergi refused to be seen as fighting for Cerritos. Baal pledged full loyalty to follow orders. The two demon commanders took a shortcut from the last king's zone toward the swamps of destruction. On the other hand, Cerritos stayed with Hartog, who demonstrated his ability to create dew, while the farmers cheered and continued their work planting potatoes. Meanwhile, in the swamps of destruction, Raster's troops had turned the Planus region into a sea of fire, with flames devouring the entire area relentlessly. Inside the palace in the swamps of destruction, Raster and King Planus were fiercely battling. The wounded Planus held back his anger, questioning Raster's courage to defy the Demon King's orders and launch a rebellion. However, Raster argued that ending the expedition would only lead to his people's slow destruction. Planus still believed the Demon King's promise that fertile land would end war and bring prosperity. For Raster, war was the identity and pride of the demon race, so he prepared to attack once again. A foreign force arrived, interrupting the attack, knocking Raster's weapon away and leaving him stunned. Baal and Sergi appeared before him. Sergi stated that the demon race was indeed born from war and was used to fighting. On the other hand, Flute ran excitedly toward his father and then invited him to the field. Sergi himself remained waiting on the battlefield, questioning when the real war would begin. Not long after, Flute, his father, and the farmers arrived at the field and fell silent as they witnessed a sight they could hardly believe. Flowers bloomed on the once hard ground as a rainbow transformed the field into a breathtaking expanse of life. All the demon people shed tears of joy, while Kratos realized that creating life brought far greater pride than taking it away. Asurat also cried, and that scene became a symbol of new hope for life and happiness that had long been out of their reach. Flute ran toward Kratos with a beaming face. His eyes sparkled as he witnessed the beauty of a flower he had never seen before. Kratos only responded with a faint smile, while on the other side, the battle between Sergi and Raster was still raging fiercely. Sergi showered Raster with 6 daggers, but all of them were successfully deflected, until Baal came from behind and strangled Raster, giving Sergi a chance to attack again. In the midst of that, Kratos calmly explained to Flute about the blooming flowers. However, the situation changed when Kratos ordered all the flowers to be picked immediately. The order triggered disappointment and anger among the farmers, including Asurat, who went berserk, while Hartog actually understood that it was all done to divert nutrients for the potato harvest, so he ordered the farmers to continue. With heavy hearts, all the flowers were picked, though their beauty left many farmers feeling a sense of loss. Kratos laughed with satisfaction, picturing potatoes growing underground and the farmers accepting the situation. Not long after, Sergi and Baal managed to capture Raster and brought him before Kratos. Raster was unafraid and even asked to be killed, believing a demon without pride in battle was worse than death. Kratos immediately attacked him with lightning, but realized that Raster's body was too tough, making his attack ineffective. In the end, Raster was tied to a pole and made into their 3rd lightning rod. Seeing that, Kratos actually felt satisfied because he considered Raster a valuable asset. Lightning struck Raster's body repeatedly while he kept roaring, hoping that death would come soon. At the same time, Kratos ordered the release of the 1st lightning rod, Asurat, because his recovery ability had declined and he was considered ready for retirement. Even Kratos himself was surprised by his own decision. All of Asurat's restraints were released, causing him to fall. Flute immediately approached, but was shocked when Asurat instead whistled and then laughed, imagining the cruelty he would inflict on the Mons and Kratos. Flute was terrified when Asurat's body became a monster, but his weak legs gave out after being tied up so long and he fell. Baal arrived, picked him up, and strapped him to his back like a baby, saying it was an order from the Demon King, the Mon. For Asurat, it was the greatest humiliation. Kratos was just relieved Asurat didn't throw a tantrum since he could see with his blood eye that Asurat would die in 6 hours. So for now, Kratos let him go. In the fields, Kratos encouraged the farmers because harvest time was near. On the other hand, Sergi kept cutting down the flowers with his sword, and Hartog, who had awakened his ultimate power, was ordered to water the plants. However, Kratos began to worry about the dwindling food supplies. Although the Mon were still holding on, exhaustion was clearly visible among them. Not long after, Planus approached Kratos and expressed his gratitude for being saved. However, Kratos was confused and didn't understand the reason. Meanwhile, Planus was also puzzled because he thought it was the Mon commanders who had saved him. Kratos' expression turned annoyed, leaving Planus bewildered. Meanwhile, in his mind, Kratos felt that words of gratitude should come with a gift, not empty-handed. Planus then explained that he had deployed all his subordinates to help with Kratos' work, until Kratos realized and muttered that he was just used to his old culture. He refocused on the fields, determined that everyone would eat until full, though he briefly questioned why he was now so serious about managing agriculture. After that, Planus said goodbye, while Kratos observed him and considered him a simple person but with strong principles and loyalty, even potentially useful for agriculture. On his journey, Planus felt the land he walked on was very fertile, far different from the swamp of destruction, and memories of the barren land from the past resurfaced. Sometime later, Planus then jumped into a ravine, realizing that on the land blessed by Kratos, he could become stronger. He absorbed energy from the ground in front of him, causing root branches to emerge from the surface. At that moment, Planus' ambition became uncontrollable, thinking that he should be the Demon King. A new day dawned as the morning sun rose, chasing away the night's lingering cold. Kratos stood in front of the troops, inviting them to start the day with morning exercises, even acting as the instructor for the demons himself. The farmers followed every movement enthusiastically and became more organized over time, showing their extraordinary physical strength. They could even follow sudden instructions well, because strong stamina is an important asset in farming. Not long after, Baal came in a panic and reported that all the potato leaves in the field had turned yellow. Kratos immediately went to the field, and it was true, the leaves had turned yellow. Hartok, Zephyros, and Sergi were already there, silently staring at the field with concern, each questioning their own abilities in farming. In that gloomy atmosphere, Kratos examined the plants and pulled one out, then saw that potatoes had grown at the roots, 3 times larger than before. Kratos realized that the potatoes grew by absorbing all the nutrients from the plant up to the leaves in order to produce larger tubers. He smiled with satisfaction and praised the hard work of the entire troop. The demon commanders felt relieved because the results were not bad. Even Baal shed tears of pride. Time kept moving. Day turned into night, and the moonlight once again peacefully enveloped the palace. In his room, Kratos lay down while gazing at the sky in silence until old memories began to resurface. He recalled the cherry tomato plant and his grandmother, who credited Kim Jong-cheol's hard work for the harvest. More memories came to him. Ambulance sirens and memories of Kim Jong-cheol crying as his grandmother was taken away in critical condition left Kratos silent for a long time, despite not being easily swayed by emotions. In the middle of the night, he realized that the potatoes they planted would soon become their main source of food. However, he knew the dangers of depending on one crop, including the threat of disease and famine, as in past tragedies. So he started thinking about finding seeds from other plants. A loud explosion sounded above, shaking the floor. The floor split open, and a giant tree burst forth, tossing Kratos aside as it grew uncontrollably into the sky. Meanwhile, Flute, who was in the field, noticed something strange about the potato plants. Their leaves were too fragile. It was different from what Kratos had explained before. When he pulled up a plant, he was shocked to find no potatoes at its roots, and the leaves instantly crumbled. Flute panicked and shouted to alert the adults, but just as he turned around, something far more terrifying happened. The Demon King's castle was suddenly wrapped in giant roots that emerged from every direction, shaking the ground with a tremendous roar. In the midst of the chaos, the roots grabbed Kratos' hands and feet, rendering him completely unable to move, causing him to panic. King Planus was revealed as the mastermind and laughed at the helpless Kratos, comparing him to a cockroach. Planus explained that the nutrient-rich potato fields and fertile soil created by Kratos actually became the source of his power, allowing him to grow that large. Hearing this, Kratos was shocked. Meanwhile, Flute sat crying in the middle of the field, panicked and scared. Kratos' anger peaked because the attack not only threatened him, but also the crops that the entire army had worked so hard for. However, Planus didn't care. He twisted the roots around Kratos, sending excruciating pain through him and almost stopping his blood flow. Without pause, Planus slammed Kratos to the ground, creating a loud thud that shook the surrounding area and forced him to scream in pain. Meanwhile, Zephyros and the other commanders tried to save themselves from the chaos. Baal tried to break through to Kratos, but was stopped by Sergi and Asurat, who believed the Demon King could still hold his own. However, Baal remained persistent, because he knew Kratos was already weakened. Amidst the destruction, Kratos' palace completely collapsed, destroyed by the giant roots. Meanwhile, Planus' body kept growing until he turned into a giant figure, spreading pressure and fear in all directions. Amidst the destruction, a big question arose about the fate of Kratos. Tybon, Zephyros, and the demon generals gathered outside the palace, staring at the towering giant figure before them. Zephyros instantly saw that the creature was Planus, king of the Swamp of Destruction, now a giant with a body covered in huge roots, making the demons look like ants. With a deep voice, Planus called all the demons and announced that Kratos was dead. That statement immediately froze the atmosphere, leaving Baal, Asurat, Sergi, and Hartog speechless and unable to react. Zephyros refused to believe it. Meanwhile, Tybon couldn't hold back his tears. Amid the panic, Planus emphasized the old principle of the demon realm. Power comes from strength. Since Kratos was dead, no one else had the right to lead except himself. Then he declared himself the new demon king and ordered all demons to kneel before his power. Hartog realized that Planus had absorbed almost all the nutrients of the demon land, making him the strongest creature left. In a system that upholds strength, he finally chose to kneel. Asurat followed, though hesitantly. Meanwhile, Sergi finally submitted after realizing the power gap was too great. The 4 demon generals knelt before Planus as the new king. Zephyros, watching this, struggled to contain his anger, but eventually bowed under pressure. The entire demon army finally submitted to the new demon king, Planus. Zephyros could only hold back his tears. He went along with the situation not out of his own desire, but because he had no other choice. In the midst of darkness, Kratos was trapped in a dream that showed him his past. He remembered being young Kim Jong-cheol, happily playing with his mother in Seoul Park before being asked to play hide-and-seek. But from that moment, Kratos immediately realized that day was the worst day of his life, one he could never forget. In that dream, his mother asked the young Kim Jong-cheol to close his eyes and count to 10, then look for her. As the counting began, Kratos was overwhelmed with sadness and a tightness in his chest, while the little boy counted enthusiastically up to 10. But without realizing it, his mother had already left him. When Kim Jong-cheol opened his eyes, he ran to look for his mother, convinced she was just hiding, but he couldn't find anyone. He repeated the counting and the search, hoping his mother would reappear, but the result was the same. Only silence answered him. That scene broke Kratos' heart, bringing back old wounds that never healed. Tears finally fell, his body trembling as he held back the sadness, while he could only watch again the most painful moment of his life. Little Kim Jong-cheol was abandoned by his mother in a park meant for happiness, forcing him to continue alone with wounds he couldn't yet comprehend. In the midst of those painful memories, a notification window popped up and tore through his dream, forcing him back to reality. The notification told him to wake up immediately, and slowly, Kim Jong-cheol opened his eyes and regained consciousness. As his vision cleared, all he could see was pitch darkness. He woke up in an unfamiliar place, his body weak, covered in wounds, and blood still soaking parts of his body. In his confusion, Kratos wondered if the notification had called his name, questioned where he was, and even doubted whether he was still alive. But there was no answer from the system except for the command to keep moving in order to survive. Kratos immediately looked for a way to save himself, briefly considering a quantum leap, but realized his body could barely move, and the space around him was too cramped even to turn around. Even so, he could still move his hands. From that remaining ability, hope re-emerged, and Kratos began to think that the only way out was to keep trying to dig his way little by little with his hands until he found an opening to survive. Meanwhile, Planus called the archivist to come closer. Zephyros, with Tybo on his back, stepped forward, saluted, and reported to the new demon king. Planus ordered that the first step of his reign be properly recorded. From that moment on, the demon nation would colonize human lands. All of humanity would be conquered, harvested, and then raised as a food source. Hartog heard the order and realized that the demons had returned to their original instincts. However, for him, that situation actually felt interesting, because he could fight and kill as he pleased again. Asurat had the same thoughts. In his mind, that was the true way of life for a demon. Sergi silently agreed as well. Meanwhile, Baal thought everything was fine as long as their stomachs stayed full. However, the 4 demon commanders were filled with the same question. For some reason, they felt a strong sense of irritation and anger, emotions that should no longer shake the heart of a cruel demon. On the other hand, Kratos was still struggling in the darkness, refusing to give up. Amidst his increasingly heavy breaths, he kept counting, forcing himself to endure as his condition grew weaker. Meanwhile, Planus ordered all the demons to take up arms. He announced that the demon race would go to war once again, while his followers could only kneel before him. However, Zephyros remained silent. With surprising courage, he declared that they could not start that war. Planus was shocked to hear that someone dared to oppose him. Hartog and Aserat also showed the same shock. Zephyros explained that their food supplies were down to just a few potatoes, an amount that could never support an invasion of that scale. Hearing that explanation, Planus instead looked confused, as if questioning the foolishness of that statement. Root branches then emerged from his body. Calmly, Planus stated that they actually already had enough food. In an instant, the roots shot out and wrapped around Flute's small body, who never expected such a fate to befall him. Dudu, Flute's father, screamed hysterically, calling out to his daughter. Meanwhile, Aserat could only stand frozen, witnessing the scene. Planus lifted Flute's body into the air, then asserted that if weak and useless demons were made into food, they would never run out of supplies again. Flute refused with all her courage. She believes that demons don't need to prey on each other to survive. For her, Kratos has proven that this path is truly possible. Hearing that name, Planus' gaze turned full of anger. Without warning, he released his root's grip, causing Flute's body to fall freely from a height. On the other hand, Kratos was still holding on in the sea of darkness. His hand pressed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat slowing down. Barely conscious, he imagined all the demon inhabitants, realizing that his death would only bring them back to hunger. With the last bit of strength he had left, Kratos tried to use the Bloody Strike ability. In an instant, lightning struck his own body, forcing his heart and nervous system back into action. In his mind, there was only one conviction. He could not let the demon people suffer from hunger again. Slowly, he began to move his hand again. Kratos mustered all his strength, desperately crawling to get out of that place. Meanwhile, Planus stared at the figure now standing before him. It turned out that Asura had moved faster than anyone else, saving Flute, who had fallen from a height and was now holding her tightly in his arms. Trapped by sand and debris, Kratos kept fighting, using his last strength to dig a small gap and escape the deadly trap. He even used Bloody Strike, unleashing flashes of light and lightning in the cramped space. But it still wasn't enough to free him. Every movement felt heavy and painful, until even Kratos, the Demon King, began to have trouble breathing and could barely hold on. As he kept digging, he was filled with doubt, questioning the direction, the distance, and whether his efforts still made sense. Meanwhile, he remained trapped in the narrow darkness with no sign of hope. Outside the ruins of the palace, Hartog, Sergi, and Baal still stood in silence before Planus, who had transformed into a terrifying giant, their hearts not fully accepting defeat and still hoping for Kratos' return. Aserat stood staring sharply at Planus, holding Flute, who was scared and kept crying, even though she still felt a little safe. The tension peaked as Planus released a tremendous pressure that made the ground shake, causing Flute to panic again. In a provocative act, Aserat bit Flute's head as if making her his prey. However, this triggered an attack from Planus as giant roots shot out, striking both. The attack sent Aserat flying, dragging him far beyond the demon commanders. Then he was slammed hard and lost consciousness. Zephyros only glanced coldly without trying to help. Meanwhile, Planus once again emphasized with a booming voice that the incident was the final warning for everyone before him. Planus ordered all the demons to prepare for the coming war. However, Zephyros remained silent with a blank expression, and finally voiced his objection because there was no clear reason for war. That refusal enraged Planus. He immediately swung a giant root toward Zephyros. However, the attack was stopped by Baal, who dashed in with his axe. Baal blocked the root and protected Zephyros. Then he tried to calm Planus' anger by explaining that Zephyros was carrying out an important task from Kratos to calculate the potato harvest, so he must not die. That reason only fueled Planus' anger even more, as he saw their actions as defiance. The atmosphere grew even more tense when Hartog calmly stated that they had no intention of rebelling, but rather placed greater trust in the farming path Kratos left behind. Sergi then joined the conversation, questioning the reason for war when Kratos had already shown a way of life without bloodshed. Those words truly made Planus explode. He belittled them as insects and went on a rampage, asserting himself as the embodiment of power itself, with giant roots shaking the surroundings. However, Hartog was undeterred and quickly challenged Planus' claim, insisting they wouldn't give in so easily. Hartog, together with the demon generals, declared that true strength comes from truth, not just power. Tybon and the demon army pledged loyalty to Kratos and demanded Planus return the seized potato fields. But their courage was instantly met with anger. When Planus moved the giant roots that attacked with terrifying speed, it caused the demon army to panic. Hartog quickly extended his arms, forming a mist that became a giant wall, blocking all root attacks and keeping the troops safe. On the other side, Baal threw Sergi into the air to attack Planus, and Sergi used that momentum to slash Planus's roots until they were chopped up. He even managed to reach the giant's head to attack. However, Planus quickly retaliated, striking Sergi and sending him flying, causing him to lose his weapon. Other roots coiled around Baal, leaving him badly hurt. Hartog was crushed by the roots and screamed in pain. Amidst the chaos, Planus grew even more furious, intending to kill them all and asserting that he was far stronger than Kratos. Then he went on a rampage, roots striking wildly and sending demon troops flying. Some were flung by the giant whip-like roots. Planus's power was terrifying, making Hartog fall helplessly and bleed heavily. During the rampage, Planus again belittled Kratos and questioned his worth as Demon King. Meanwhile, Sergi, who had fallen from a great height, lay weak and bloody. On the other side, Zephyros was still trying to hold on while carrying Flute, dodging the attacks that kept raining down on them as the chaos reached its peak. Suddenly, Planus fell silent when he heard a familiar voice, a voice that questioned his conviction. Then that figure appeared from the ruins, Kratos, who was thought to be dead. His body was covered in wounds and blood. However, his clenched fists showed he hadn't given up. His arrival instantly changed things. He blocked the root attack on Zephyros and Flute, then destroyed it with a burst of power. Planus was shocked and annoyed that Kratos was still alive, while Flute felt hopeful seeing him stand again. Amid the ruined battlefield, a system notification announced the awakening of mutant abilities in a critical state. Kratos stood tall, sharply watching Planus as his nutrient focus ability activated. "10 minutes earlier, Kratos was still trapped under the rubble, gasping for breath in the darkness. His body kept digging with the last of his remaining strength. Every movement felt heavier, while the pain slowly eroded his consciousness. In that condition, his mind drifted back to the past when he was still Kim Jong-cheol. He remembered his grandmother, who patiently planted seeds, and used to say he was like a seed that had to survive even when buried by life's pressures. His grandmother says all living things keep pushing through to grow, and one surviving sprout brings hope to others until the world is filled with life. But for young Jong-cheol, all of that felt annoying and hard to accept. He was filled with anger and sadness, questioning the suffering in his life, his father's death, his mother's departure, and even feeling that he might be a cursed seed. In his tears, he rejected all that advice and was determined to live only for himself, pursuing success without relying on anyone. When Jong-cheol grew up, life hit him even harder. His grandmother's condition declined until she lay weak in the hospital, leaving Jong-cheol in tears as he watched the only person he relied on near death. Amid labored breaths behind the oxygen mask, his grandmother still called his name and held his hand tightly, holding on to the belief until the end of her life that they were seeds that must continue to grow. That memory ended, and Jong-cheol, who had now become Sarutul, snapped out of his daydream in the darkness. His determination was reignited. Flashes of lightning appeared all around him. Then he reactivated the blood attack, causing a tremendous vibration that shook the sand, burying him. At that moment, a notification system appeared, explaining that he had survived the pain of rebirth and that his will to live had surpassed its limits, unlocking a new system called Monoseed. The system explained that the Monoseed was at level 3 with a status multiplier of 1.3 times, which made Sarutul start to see an opportunity to escape from the trap. However, the system continued as another ability, Nutritional Focus, activated. Sarutul stared at the information until a new notification appeared. The system explained that Nutritional Focus could concentrate all stats into one chosen attribute, only once a day for 10 minutes, making Sarutul realize how useful that ability was. The system also displayed his status, which was still at 30 in all attributes. Without hesitation, he activated the Monoseed system, causing a small point of light to appear in the darkness, which slowly turned into a glowing blue seed. All his attributes increased to 39%. Then he immediately activated Nutrient Focus, concentrating everything on strength. As a result, his strength soared to 94%, while his other attributes dropped to 21%. Then he increased the focus again until his strength reached 115%, even though his other attributes dropped drastically to 10%. Using his newfound strength, Sarutul dug through the ruins, clearing the sand and debris pressing down on him. Outside, Planus' rampage was still going on, but underground, Sarutul kept moving non-stop until cracks began to appear, grew larger, and finally broke open. With one last push, his hand broke through the ground, marking the start of his freedom. Thanks to his relentless determination and drastic increase in strength, Sarutul finally managed to break free from the pile of earth and rubble that had imprisoned him, then stood tall before Planus. His cloak fluttered amidst the wounds on his body. However, his aura remained unshaken. Planus was surprised by Sarutul unexpected return, while Sarutul just gave a mocking smile, belittling Planus for not understanding the situation. On the battlefield, the demon troops trapped among the giant roots immediately fell silent when they realized Sarutul had appeared. Then cheers erupted as their hope was revived. Taibon immediately flew over and, filled with emotion, confirmed Sarutul presence. Hardtop considered the appearance to be good news. However, Sergi and Bale saw things worsening as Planus' power grew more uncontrollable. Amid the tension, Planus again threatened to kill Sarutul and his subordinates. Still, Sarutul stayed calm and grinned, confident no one would die that day. He quickly analyzed Planus' attack patterns, considering them still predictable like a game mechanic. He also believed the demons would be able to follow his instructions. He then ordered all the troops to stand behind him and follow his every move without hesitation. Without wasting any time, all the troops lined up behind Sarutul as Planus' giant roots shot forward with terrifying force. But Sarutul reacted even faster. Their leader jumped left, dodging the attack, which hit empty ground. For the next attack, he ordered them to jump to the right, then told everyone to lie down as the roots swept past. All attacks were avoided again with synchronized movements. Planus then slammed several roots down at once, and Sarutul ordered his troops to roll to the left, making them move in unison like a coordinated wave. Although it looked strange, almost like a dance, the strategy was effective, and Sarutul kept leading the unusual movements to avoid all the attacks. Planus began to lose patience, as not a single one of his attacks hit the target. In the midst of that situation, Sarutul noticed a pause in Planus' attack pattern, a gap that he immediately took advantage of. He then ordered his troops to circle around and pointed at Planus with a mocking expression. This only made Planus even angrier and increased the speed of his attacks with wildly thrashing roots. Seeing that, Sarutul smiled slightly, having finally understood Planus' attack pattern, which boosted his confidence. If before, Sarutul faced Planus as if it were a game, now he switched to using real-world logic. Without waiting, he ordered Taibon to move forward. Taibon immediately shot into the air, took a deep breath, then blew a blast of high-pressure cold air like an ice storm toward Planus. In an instant, Planus' face and the roots covering it began to freeze. The ice spread quickly, wrapping around most of the giant's body. From a distance, Sarutul just watched with a slight smile, realizing ordinary attacks were useless against such a huge creature. But Planus was still plant-based. Taibon exhaled freezing breath non-stop, covering Planus' whole body in thick ice. Sarutul then analyzed that the extreme freezing changed the internal pressure inside Planus' body, damaging its structure from within and causing gradual cracks. The giant roots started moving uncontrollably. The ice layers cracked and shattered one after another, sending wood and ice fragments flying. The destruction spread through Planus, causing it to collapse in a way it couldn't understand. Amidst the destruction, Sarutul just smiled, confident that no matter how strong the creature was, it couldn't survive damage that destroyed it from within. Planus panicked as its body began falling apart. The roots containing its power shattered into wooden fragments drifting like dead leaves. Taibon, task complete, flew back to Sarutul, but after receiving praise for successfully freezing Planus' body, he ran out of energy and collapsed weakly in Sarutul' arms. Seeing the situation, Sarutul knew this was the time to end the battle. Then he jumped into the air at high speed, clenched his fists, and aimed his final attack at the black knothole in Planus' chest, which he had identified as the main weakness. With all his remaining strength, Sarutul struck that point until it cracked and finally shattered into pieces. But right after the attack succeeded, his body also lost its strength. His vision blurred and he fell, unable to control himself. On the other side, Planus screamed in agony as if his body was being destroyed from within, while Zephyros, protecting Taibon and Flute, watched convinced Sarutul had won. Soon after, the system announced the end of the nutrient-focused time limit. weakening Cerritos further and causing his consciousness to fade as Planus's body slowly collapsed, destroyed little by little, accompanied by screams that echoed like a sign of his defeat. Time kept moving. Planus's voice, which had previously shaken the battlefield, slowly weakened until it finally disappeared completely. His eyes and mouth closed. His body was stiff and motionless like a dead tree trunk. Zephyros looked at him with a furrowed brow, unsure if the monster was truly dead, while the giant roots around them also stopped moving, making the atmosphere silent. Cerritos, regaining consciousness, stared at Planus's body with a strange feeling. In the game, defeated enemies vanished completely. They never remained like this. As the confusion arose, from within the ground, a small root crawled to the surface, writhing and transforming into a new human figure in the form of Planus. Even though he was exhausted, Cerritos realized the new threat before him. Meanwhile, the demons lost hope because Planus was still alive after all. Planus, now reincarnated in human form, explained that he was formed from the extraordinary nutrients he absorbed, as well as the remaining power he concentrated to create a new body. He also revealed his origin as a seed from the poisonous swamp that grew in decay. Then he expressed his belief that his destiny was to cover the world with the same poison. With determination to finish off Cerritos, Planus raised his hand. But at that very moment, a shadow suddenly shot in from behind him. Baal attacked first, striking Planus's neck with a giant axe until a loud crack rang out. But the monster stayed standing without reacting. Even though the axe managed to sink deep, Baal failed to sever Planus's head and was instead thrown back when a counterattack sent him flying. Sergi immediately followed up with a series of sword slashes. None of his attacks caused serious wounds before a hard punch to his stomach sent him flying. Hartog then joined in, using mist to target the back of Planus's neck. However, his attack was easily deflected and he was slammed to the ground. In the midst of that situation, Asarat managed to sneak behind and swung his sword with precision, slashing Planus's neck almost completely off. Then he finished it with a second slash that fully decapitated him. Kratos watched blankly to confirm the fight was over as Planus's body lost balance and crumbled into ashes, both his new form and his former towering giant body, until the wind carried them away. The demon troops fell silent as they witnessed the unimaginable fall of Planus, while Kratos, exhausted, silently praised the commanders who managed to defeat him together. Not long after, the commanders immediately approached Kratos to check on the king's condition. Hartog was shocked when Zephyros brought up the betrayal. Then he stated in his record that the victory was achieved by the demon king Kratos' army. Hearing that, Hartog fell silent and seemed hesitant for a moment, before finally raising his hand and shouting Kratos' name. His cheer was quickly echoed by the demon army, who celebrated their victory over Planus with joy, filling the battlefield with happiness after so long. However, Kratos then shouted, asking everyone to be quiet. Immediately, everyone fell silent, following Kratos' order. Kratos then looked around attentively. Seeing their potato fields in ruins, the plants wilted, and the nutrients completely absorbed. He sat down with his head bowed, filled with anxiety and regret, questioning whether he was still worthy of asking them to plant again and face the possibility of hunger once more, while the commanders slowly stopped their celebration and turned their attention to him. In the midst of that silence, the green ash of Planus kept falling like a gentle rain, until one of its flakes touched a dry leaf. Surprisingly, the leaf reacted, lifting itself from the ground and emitting a glow, as if new life was beginning to rise from the remnants of destruction. In the past, a number of men were trapped in a gloomy underground prison, sitting weakly in despair as they heard the news that there was a new demon king. Amid the silence, young Zephyros believed their fate wouldn't change. Remaining demons faded to prey on each other. The atmosphere grew tense as a large sword-wielding warden entered and opened the cell, making the prisoners panic and scatter. However, his attention was drawn to young Zephyros, who remained seated calmly without fear, unlike the others. The warden picked him up. However, Zephyros still did not react, even as the large sword came down to execute him. Before the attack landed, Kratos appeared and quickly destroyed the warden, ripping off his head and tossing it aside, saving Zephyros from death. Kratos asked why Zephyros wasn't afraid despite being in danger. However, Zephyros calmly replied that death was not something to be feared, because as a demon, he felt that he had been destined to be prey since birth. So death actually felt like an escape from suffering. Hearing Zephyros's thoughts, Kratos gave a slight smile and realized that the boy was different. He then invited Zephyros to join him and appointed him keeper of the new Demon Kingdom's archives. reaffirming his goal as Demon King to eventually end demons preying on each other, a practice that had only been a temporary means of survival. Years later, Zephyros saw that Kratos had truly changed things through agriculture and broke that dark cycle. But all those efforts are now destroyed because of Planus. With a feeling of pity, Zephyros walked away carrying Tybon, then took a hoe and started tilling the soil without saying much. Hartog understood his intention, then ordered the entire farming squad to help cultivate the fields, reviving their spirits, including Flute, who also helped with his small equipment. Kratos, still lost in thought, watched the troops singing enthusiastically as they returned to tilling the fields, even though their work was still messy. He then gave structured instructions, dividing the team to search for leftover potatoes, form soil mounds, and prepare seeds together with Sergi and Zephyros, while Hartog and Aserat were assigned supporting tasks. With renewed spirit, Kratos led again, motivating the troops until they cheered and worked toward a new bountiful harvest. A moment later, Baal was seen struggling to pull a rope with his teeth, which was tied to the legs of farming troops plowing fields while lying down and dragging hoes to work faster. Seeing this, Kratos fell silent, realizing such situations are common in agriculture. After various disasters, pests, wars, and even crop failures, he understood that searching for food is basically an endless battle. On the other hand, Flute found a healthy potato sprout in the middle of the damaged soil, then tried to pull it out together with Aserat until they finally succeeded. But what appeared instead were a large number of giant potatoes. One of them even rolled and hit the blaster, which couldn't move. Meanwhile, Flute and Aserat were surprised and delighted to see the result. Flute immediately reported it to Kratos, who, after seeing the giant potatoes, remembered a detail in the game about leftover Planus nutrients being absorbed into the soil. Realizing that the Planus body this time was much larger than the version in the game, Kratos immediately concluded that the soil contained extraordinary nutrients, then ordered the entire squad to stop working and dig deeper. The troops immediately obeyed the order and discovered that beneath the ground, there were a lot of giant potatoes hidden. With great enthusiasm, the farming troops lifted the giant potatoes high, greeted by cheers of joy throughout the field. They realized that the land, which was once thought to be barren, actually held an extraordinary harvest, with giant potatoes appearing in various spots. Kratos stood silently watching the scene, wondering to himself how many potatoes were hidden beneath the field. On the other hand, Hartog, Baal, and the entire army cheered loudly, as if they had discovered a treasure buried in the ground. Not long after, Zephyros asked if this was what they called a bountiful harvest, and Kratos confirmed it with full confidence. Tears streamed down his face as he realized for the first time, after all the suffering and struggle, he was truly seeing the results of their hard work. This is the bountiful harvest. And in his heart, Kratos remained grateful, because they had finally managed to create a future where everyone could eat until they were full. Thank you. Okay, the story ends here. Hopefully all of you were entertained by this content. My highest appreciation goes to all the creators behind this comic with its interesting story. I hope the way I presented this storyline can be the best tribute to their work. Please continue to support the original comic. The title is available in the description. Creating quality content truly takes time and patience, from narration, cleaning up the images, to thorough editing, all for the quality of your viewing experience. So, please be patient while waiting for the ending. From Meeman, or if you can't wait any longer, you can go ahead and read the original comic. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, share your thoughts in the comments section. And remember, let's respect each other's different tastes. I hope you all stay healthy. See you again in more interesting content.